Welcome to the Transportation Licensing Commission August 22nd monthly meeting. If you'll join me, let's do the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's just swear everybody in with. All right. Pursuant to the provisions of Section 2.68.030 of the Metropolitan Code of Laws, notice is hereby given that if you are not satisfied with the decision made by the Metropolitan Transportation Licensing Commission, you may appeal the decision by petitioning for a writ of certiorari with the Davidson County Chancery or Circuit Court. Your appeal must be filed within 60 days of the date of the entry of the Metropolitan Transportation Licensing Commission's decision. We advise that you seek your own independent legal advice to ensure that your appeal is filed in a timely manner and that all procedural requirements have been met. Have the commissioners had an opportunity to read the minutes from the August 7th meeting?
We have.
Yes.
Is there a motion?
I'll move to accept.
Second? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Then you should also have the minutes from the August,
July 20th.
July 25th.
And have we had an opportunity to review the minutes from the July 25th meeting?
I have.
You have? Okay. All right.
I'll make a motion we accept or approve.
Second the motion.
Before we vote, let's make sure everybody's had an opportunity to review them. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, they pass. Mr. Fields, I have on the agenda today a public hearing.
I'm sorry, sir.
I have the first thing on the agenda today, public hearing, request by Dad's Towing Service for a reassignment to their business of the emergency record zone previously assigned to Carter's Record Service. Can you tell us what zones we're talking about?
The zone we're talking about is a zone typically called the Carter Zone. As zones are assigned, we typically name them after the company that they're assigned to. This particular zone covers an area that is the northwest section of the county with I-24 as the eastern boundary, and then the boundary just above the Cumberland River on the southern part. It is typically, because of the nature of the roads in the area, it's one of the, I would call it one of the slower areas, only because there's just fewer, the population is less and the traffic is much less.
There's much less traffic somewhere in Nashville?
In Joelton, they'd like to keep it that way, so
right.
I want to be on the record for that. So.
What is the, what's Dad's Towing Service's interest in the change here?
Dad's Towing operates West Nashville as well as Dad's Towing. They've worked with Miss Carter, and I think everybody's here. They've purchased the record business from Miss Carter, and they're asking for permission to operate the zone previously operated by Carter's. It's in order for that to happen, the commission has to have a meeting, have to have a public hearing. Accept any other applications. There were no applications other than the one filed by Dad's Towing Service.
So by default, do you have a recommendation?
What I've said previously is other companies have operated, all of our emergency companies are well run, well operated. I think Dad's is the same. I think they can certainly operate Carter's. And just absorb that. They're actually, if you go to the eastern border of Carter's, it actually butts up to Dad's now. So the option, and we don't have to do it today, but one of the options is either to combine the zones or leave the zones separate. But basically, Dad's would just migrate over and operate the northwest zone. I would probably call it Dad's 2 just because we need to call it something.
Any of the commissioners have any other questions or anything?
We spoke about this last time in an interim, didn't we?
It had to be announced one meeting previous. If you want to hear from Mr. Mitchell, he's present. But it has to be announced one meeting, and then it can be discussed and action taken the next one.
Nashville, owner of Dad's Towing in West Nashville, Wrecker. With assisting Ms. Carter for the last few months in the operation of just to back up for her, we are capable of handling the zone without any problem. We have made an agreement with Ms. Carter to purchase it. Of course, our request is for the zone to be transferred to us. It is a zone that we should be able to handle, and we may consider splitting the zone up between West Nashville and Dad's at a later time, but right now we're going to try to leave it just as Carter's.
How many zones are you in right now?
Well, Dad's is one zone by itself, and
Okay.
West Nashville is one zone by itself.
Any other questions?
Nope.
Do we have a motion?
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Next on our agenda is the amend emergency regulation to govern the interim period of reduced SUMD fleet operations in Metro, as well as operations after an operator has been selected pursuant to the RFP process. Ms. Costones,
Sorry, go ahead.
were you going to fill us in a little bit about what you have looked into regarding the second matter on our agenda and the substitute ordinance of 1658?
Yes. I have copies that I believe the commission members already have and that other people can have copies of if they're interested, of both the regulations that were adopted at the August 7th meeting, the draft, and then showing the changes to section 050L of that draft that the commission made at the last meeting. Then I also have a proposed revision of 050L of that set of regulations, which is a separate one-page copy. And again, if anyone's interested, Lisa does have copies of these two documents up at the front table. So the change is proposing to change 050L to read as follows. Operation of SUMDs or SUMDs, as some people pronounce it, is prohibited after 9 p.m. and before 5 a.m. So that was a proposed resolution that's kind of perceived as a compromise between the position of the commission at the August 7th meeting, and this all has to do with the interpretation of the language of substitute ordinance BL 2019-1658. So our interpretation of that ordinance that the rules adopted on August 7th was based on a reading of the at a minimum requires language in that substitute ordinance to mean that the commission could go above and beyond the 8 items that council listed following that language. And there was a contrary interpretation of that provision that read it to mean that the 8 items were required to be adopted by the commission in precisely the way that they were set forth by the council. So the difference there being the one that was really in controversy was the previous rule that the commission had adopted regarding operation time periods for SUMDs of ending at dusk or half an hour after sunset and resuming operation at dawn or half an hour following sunrise. That was perceived as being kind of above and beyond the at a minimum 8 items that council had listed in substitute ordinance 1658. So their language was that operations would cease at 10 p.m. on weekdays and 11 p.m. on weekends, and that that there should also be an exception to that if there was a device able to verify that the rider was not impaired. And so the compromise is the language that you see in the proposed amendment. Between those two positions, between that position and the dawn and dusk position. And so it's proposed, and I'm sure representatives of the companies are here, and they can probably speak better than, and the sponsors here, they can probably speak better than I can to their position on that amendment.
All right, so the one point of contention was all about when the shared urban mobility devices would cease operation and when they could start operation, and then the interpretation of what was meant by at a minimum.
Yes,
In the ordinance, in Ordinance 1658 passed by Metro Council.
that's correct.
All right, and then I understand that your office has met with representatives from the companies, and you have presented us this document here that has a compromise of operations of shared urban mobility devices is prohibited after 9 p.m. and before 5 a.m.
Yes, and I see some of the council members, the sponsors of the ordinance in the audience, and I believe Councilmember Davis would like to speak.
Absolutely.
Could you call the public hearing together to order?
Oh, sorry.
I will open the public hearing today on the ordinance. If you'll introduce yourself and then go ahead.
Do I need to be turned on or anything, or is that?
You're good.
Okay, cool. You can hear me? Yes, thank you for having me. Anthony Davis, Metro Council, District 7. Just for a few more weeks here, but happy to be here in front of you. Actually have not been in front of the TLC in 8 years, which was surprising. I've worked with Billy a lot over the years with Uber, Lyft, and carriages and everything else, it seems like, over the years. But just to speak to the ordinance you mentioned, as you know, well, first of all, we appreciate your work as well, just what you do on the commission here. I know it's a thankless job. The scooter issue has been an ongoing issue. We've wrestled with it at council. I know you've been wrestling with it quite a bit here. When the mayor recently was pushing for a ban, my colleagues and I, some are with me here, I want to recognize Councilmember Swope and Vercher here. We worked together on coming up with kind of some solutions, building consensus on what we could do as an alternative approach, and sending you guys recommendations here at the TLC. We won overwhelming support at council with our approach. We saved jobs and we preserved a mode of transportation where, again, you know, yes, we've had some issues, but there have been, one thing we recognized was that there's been tens of thousands of Nashvillians on the scooters and alternative mobility devices here in Nashville. So we recognize keeping them here under a limited capacity with stricter rules while we pursued this RFP process would be the right move, regardless of who is the next mayor coming up here this month. I know Billy and his team have already been working on this process already. So what we passed, as you know, I know you guys went over this last meeting, but we reduced their fleet by half immediately. So we went from 4,000 to 2,000 scooters on the street. We created the mandated slow zones, mainly in the tourist areas, Broadway and 2nd Avenue, and the no-ride zones on greenways and parks. Our bill, of course, limited the operation, as was just mentioned, to 10 on weekdays and 11 on weekends. One of the most important things to me was the people on the ground as we were crafting this. They said they would do 2 employees per 100 scooters, and they would be rebalancing the fleets, putting them in the corrals. I think I have already seen a difference. I have heard from many people that there has been a difference. Even some scooter, as I would call opponents, have told me that's made a great difference downtown already by putting them in the corrals. And there's been, they would respond to property complaints as well. Mandate the helmet promotional activities. You know, we know that there's a lot said about people not being safe and not wearing helmets. The no riding on the sidewalk signage, more signage downtown. I think we still need a lot more of that, and they're working on it. The 120-minute response time to all complaints, and then the ADA hotline was mandated as well. And these solutions, frankly, a lot of them were brought to us by the companies, as you know, and they came to the table with some good solutions to all the problems that we were saying were out there. So our expectation is these would be the baseline going forward, and these would be the rules that you guys would adopt. I know one of the big concerns with your commission, which is very fair, was the hours of operation, and that you'd like to see that trimmed further. as was mentioned with this amendment, we talked to the scooter companies, and they agreed they would not operate after 9 p.m., which we think might strike a compromise kind of from what we presented to you and where you were going with that. We did vote clearly that we did, part of this was not to put the companies out of business while we waited on this RFP process. We really wanted to ensure that, they were still in business and we weren't just shutting everything down, but we were kind of bridging the gap here to get to this RFP process. If after the RFP is selected, the city and the companies agree on new hours of operation, or you'd like to divert from these 8 rules, we'd be happy, council, I won't be there, but council would be happy to revisit this. And of course, the TLC has authority over many other areas that fall outside these 8 parameters. We're just asking you for these 8 parameters to be as such. Again, I think we've made a difference already. I think it's a work in progress. We've made a huge difference. We'd like to see it through. We're inching closer to this RFP process daily, so we're almost there. And just want you to know we're partners. We took this measure up because we did want to work on it. We are hearing folks out there in the community, and we feel like these restrictions are ample to move forward and get to this RFP process, and hope you'll find this 9 p.m. a good compromise, and we can just move forward and get to the next step. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Fields, I didn't get a list of folks who may have wanted to speak at the public hearing.
I don't believe we
Has anyone shown any interest?
No, we did not have anyone who wanted to speak on this issue.
Anyone else from the council want to address the matters? Nope.
Or the public?
Or the public? Yeah, bring your mic over back. Bring your mic back to you. Who do you want to ask? Who do you want to call up? Councilman Davis, would you mind coming back up to the podium? I think one of the commissioners has a couple questions. Sure. Thanks.
I will do my best.
You slipped away a little quick.
Hi there, Councilman Davis. Thank you for all your work on this. I am we're all very concerned about the safety aspect of this. I'm particularly concerned because I live downtown. I've witnessed lots of accidents. I've been hit myself on a car, by a car into the side of my, let me start over. In my car, into the side by a scooter. I find them difficult to see, especially in inclement weather at night. And of course, it's always on my mind that we lost a life on our street as a result of these, and that weighs heavily on me as a person who is here doing my best to represent my community and do the right thing and keep everyone safe. So I'm just curious what the rationale is for allowing the operation past dark. Whether it gets dark at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock or 8 o'clock, I don't understand. I don't see a rational basis for that other than a financial incentive for the companies, of course, and we all want everyone to be able to do business. Help me understand that if you can.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think part of it is just the times that you need to use them. I mean, I think a lot of our users are coming out of work, and of course, as we know, it gets dark at 5:30 coming up here soon in the wintertime. So out of work, as far as out of entertainment venues downtown, even going to 9 p.m., it's not like you're going to get them out of people coming out of bars that much and using them. So it's more just being able to use them in those after work kind of hours to me, and it's a good time to jump on, one of these devices and get from A to B. As far as like safety and that sort of thing, I can't speak to. I think they have lights and that sort of thing, if I'm not mistaken. But that could be something as far as like the lights required and stuff like that. Of course, you can ride your bike over home after work, and bikes zip around at 30 miles an hour as well. I mean, these are 15, and bikes are at 30 at times. So I think it's again, safety is a huge thing. We cut them in half. That alone, you've got less of them out there buzzing around all the time. So that is part of the safety measure as well. Education through the app, making sure they do have lights and whatever light capabilities that you can put on them, the same way that, bikes have the reflectors and flashers and that sort of thing. I mean, I think you have to think of them in the same way as a bicycle in a way. They do have a motor, but when I'm jogging on the Greenway, Carrie drives by me at 30 on a bicycle. It's the same. It can be a safety hazard as well. So it's just kind of, coming up with a formula that works, and if we can keep using them and keep, coming up with further safety standards, I think that's important, just like with cars and bikes and everything else.
So do you feel that, for example, under D1, where you indicate the slow zones, is it also your position that those are the only slow zones we can make and those are the only ride zones we can make, or can we make others? What is your position on that?
I think we wanted to start with sort of the ones we submitted, just to, again, get through this very short process here. And to us, that, again, this is just such a, gap bridging time. It's like, hey, we wanted to start with this, and then once we get past that point, there's going to be more flexibility. Really, it just totally resets with the RFP process, because then, Metro, the administration, can say, it's these companies, and you're going to do all these things, or your contract's gone. Bye-bye. Like, you're done. So you're going to have a lot more, with the way it's changing, you're going to have a lot more control over these things, because we're moving to that process. So for us, it was like, yes, if you can just do these things, bridging the gap during this time, that was sort of our idea of, let's get over this hump, and then you've got a lot of control with this RFP process, you will.
So the ordinance 1658 you envision to be a stopgap, not necessarily a permanent rules and regulations.
That's exactly right. Yep, just trying to get us there, and again, yeah, with the RFP process, you're gonna be able to dictate. It's a total refresh. It is a total refresh.
And was that the intention of the council when they passed that ordinance?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that was very clear. We said that you can. Our Channel 3 guys over here who work very hard for us, love these guys, always make us look good. Roll the tape, you will see that that was discussed at length, and that, yes, this was just to get us there. A lot of floor talk about that. So.
Okay.
All right, so these emergency regulations are really just for now and they can change, or?
They definitely can change and evolve, and I think a lot of them is what we will want to see. I think we've learned, we learned so much through this initial process. One thing I said on the floor, we got ahead of ourselves. We did too much too soon, maybe, and of course the companies they're just gonna keep pressing, because they have other stakeholders and investors and everything else. So it was up to us to establish what the regulation should be. And so again, this process just kind of evolved, and I didn't agree with a ban, but I did respect the mayor for starting the conversation that led to this big compromise that we kind of came up with. It helped us get to a place where the companies came to us, and we all came together and we said, yeah, we've got to do something. This is a lot of people like them and ride them, yes, but we've got so many problems. We've got so many constituents that are having a problem. So this cutting them in half and then all these other X, Y, and Z measures was what we came up with for now, and would help us get to this RFP. But I think a lot of it will be able to be used. I think, again, we've learned we'll be able to use these things. I think maybe the 2 per 100, maybe it's not the exact right number, but that those boots on the ground downtown moving these things around has already made a huge difference. I'm not going to say we've solved the blocking right-of-way problem, but we've really helped the blocking the right-of-way problem. The riding on the sidewalks is still a huge problem. That's an issue, so that's something that needs to continue to be addressed. And I could go on about the bike infrastructure problem. That's part of that problem as well, that we need to invest. But another conversation for another day. But I think we'll take a lot of these measures and build them into the RFP process.
So the slow zones and the no-ride zones, that may evolve, expand, contract as we start studying the impact more.
Yes, exactly.
All right, so it's not.
We're asking you for now, yeah, just to use what we gave you. But yes, I think totally it will once we start that process.
Okay.
Okay. We got a statement for the record. I do not ride a bicycle at 30 miles an hour on the Greenway. I adhere to all rules.
For sure, yeah.
Thank you.
It was,
I was hoping for proof, but
yeah. Well, I always I'm a runner, and so I always like to get my runner biker jabs in there. That, to me, on the Greenway, that's, it's a thing even with bikers. So scooters on the Greenway, I think it just kind of, it's an easy thing to talk about, but, we all have to share our Greenways, so.
And I might make one point, maybe this is the wrong place. What we need to be talking about is behavior.
Right,
Of
yes.
riders of anything, not necessarily the technology, but the behavior of human beings.
That's exactly right.
One of my other concerns is, with all due respect, that, after we instituted Dusk to Dawn, they just ignored it. We have, I don't know how many violations, but it's a lot. It's probably hundreds. So it feels like rewarding that behavior to allow them to operate after dark when, we have very good reasons for doing it. So that's a concern for me.
Right. Well, one thing I'll say with that, yes, I'm glad you mentioned that. And the police, whether it was the dusk till dawn or the riding on the sidewalks, we just don't have the police capability for enforcement. So that is an ongoing issue. However, when we get to the RFP, again, you choose those 3 companies, you're under a contract. You say, we said 9 p.m. and you're out there till midnight, guys, I'm sorry, you're in breach of contract, you're gone. And then you go to another company, or one company's gone. So you're about to have a better situation. That's why we're trying to get to that. And that the enforcement is still an ongoing issue, and it's an ongoing issue in this bridge time, this gap. But you will have more control under an RFP process, I would say.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate all your work and efforts. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anybody else from the public that would like to speak? There's a hand in the back. Come on up. Maybe so hard.
A little low here, sorry about that.
No, you're a little tall.
So I was not expecting to be the only person in the public speaking, so a little bit kind of gun shy coming up here. But I decided, and it almost like wasn't going to do it, but thank you all for at least opening it up.
Would you introduce yourself,
Second
please?
opportunity. Sorry, my name's Benjamin Logan. I've been in Nashville about 3.5 years. And main reason I'm up here is I've enjoyed using these scooters over the last year or so that they've been up here. I'm a graduate student part-time. I live about a mile away from campus. And it's great to be able to hop on one at times when I'm a little late, can't walk. And maybe the most relevant kind of policy-wise thing about it is, for me, it's displaced. It's embarrassing to say. Sometimes I take my car to campus. I've got an electric vehicle, so that, the climate footprint's a little bit less than maybe some other ways that people would do it. But I drive over there, parking logistics, sometime when I'm running a little late. Again, being able to hop on a scooter, I'm sure I'm not the only person in the situation, but just as a wonderful convenience factor. I'm sure there are a lot of people working downtown that live about a mile and a half away. They have that same logistical plus. But for me, I think one thing that doesn't get talked about much in regards to the discussion that we're having about the common good, which is, I think, where it should be. Safety is a big thing. If, pedestrians are at risk when, they've got it's not really fair if they have to deal with kind of, either walking around scooters that have been replaced, placed on the sidewalk, or avoid, someone slipping down a highway. But I think most users are responsibly using them. But that's an important discussion. But the thing that doesn't get discussed as much here is, I think, the reduced, emissions that we see from riding them. They're displacing car trips, I think, a lot of the time, whereas you can't always say that with rideshare. Rideshare sometimes is taking one ride for another. You get drivers kind of circling around, kind of waiting for a fare. So I think there's a real benefit to the public from having these. And actually, I've challenged the scooter companies maybe to even kind of push this discussion further, because I think, if you think that the climate emergency is what most people say that it is, this is one way in which, little by little, but as a proof of concept thing, hey, it's making a real meaningful difference, because it's to place in actual car trips. And if the scooter companies maybe even take another step towards how the actual vehicles are SUMDs are charged and picked up, I think those would be real ways to, in a city that's really committed to renewable energy goals and reducing its own carbon footprint, would be really next level way to kind of take the lead on just pushing this conversation more out to the public. So again, as a user, I've really enjoyed having these. Just wanted to get that on the record. But as somebody that's concerned about sustainability, I've also kind of, and I've charged them sometimes myself, and I've thrown them in my electric vehicle. It's like, hey, that's better than I guess some of the other big old SUVs throwing them in there. They'll have an easier way of getting more than any of SUVs for sure. It's been a cool thing to have in the city. So I just wanted, since no one else was stepping up to the mantle, just to throw those 2 cents in. So thank you all.
Could I get your first name, sir?
Sure. Benjamin.
Benjamin,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Logan. There's another hand. Come on up.
Hello. If
Hi.
I may. Hi, how are you guys doing? My name's Chelsea Lovett, and I'm applying for the Rock and Roll Rickshaw, a bike taxi operation here, which is also, in my opinion, an eco way to provide transportation in the city. And I've been doing this since 2011, and I've been working in a lot of downtown areas, New Orleans, Nashville, and I think it's what I want to say to not take up too much time is a note about the behavior. And I don't know if you guys have been downtown on a Friday or a Saturday, but I personally notice a lot of intoxicated people. I worked on Bourbon Street, and with the growth of Nashville, I see maybe more intoxicated people downtown, and I think that the after dark law is, or passing of this bill is really something that you should consider in terms of safety. I've been working for a golf cart company in the interim of the permit process as I've waited on today in the application, and I have a video of a gentleman who I picked up on the golf cart who was really drunk, and he was trying to ride a scooter to Belmead. And I haven't, if you want me to put this up to the microphone and listen to it, if that provides any evidence or anything that would provide some sort of comment on the behavior.
I always want to hear the evidence personally.
This is just my firsthand experience of working downtown in the situation of, and witnessing people on scooters and operating a rickshaw, a bike, riding a bike all the time, and riding a scooter for the first time maybe 2 days before this, and I was amazed that anyone can get on these and hop on and ride on hills. You know, it's not an easy thing to operate, and anyway, this is, let's see.
Well, my 7th scooter, will y'all pick me up? Yeah. Maybe 8th, maybe 9th. I mean, I've tried so many, I can't even count it. I do at least 9 or 10.
Wow. You know why? Are you ever going to take a scooter again?
I don't really want to, man. It's not something I want to do. I don't think so. It's very unlikely on my call.
Thank you. I guess that's it, but he said he tried multiple scooters and was trying to drive to Belmead, you know, and so, yeah, that's really all I have to say about the scooters, but I do commend you for examining and being aware of the safety concerns of that, because I think after dark with drunk tourists getting on them, that presents an issue, and I think that someone's died on one, so shouldn't be a question in my opinion.
Thank you.
Not to be biased in terms of an applicant for one pedicab, but thank you.
Anybody else? Nope, one more. Maybe one more.
Hi, my name is Ricky Heatherly. I do private security downtown Nashville. And down on Broadway, these scooters, these guys coming out of these bars, they're too intoxicated to walk or drive a car, but they can jump on a scooter and take off. And I've hit one. I have hit one of them and destroyed it. I also own another company called Big Green Tractor Tours. He was coming down 2nd Avenue, right down the middle of the road, straight at my tractor, and run right in front of me, and I hit him. I don't think they should be downtown at all. Alcohol and two wheels don't mix. That's all I got to say.
Thank you. Close the public hearing and open it up for debate. It looks like to me what we have is a regulation that we passed some concern from Metro Legal about the basis for that regulation, and a proposal on the table to modify section 050 subsection L of the TLC regulation to amend it to operations between 9 p.m. or from 5 a.m. to 9 p.m.
Can I be recognized?
Of course.
I'll make a motion we accept the amended regulation as proposed by Metro Legal. Is that an appropriate motion? And that's in front of us. So I propose.
One thing I have learned recently is one of our motions was carefully analyzed later in terms of whether there was a violation of, or whether someone else had violated one of our motions. We need to be very specific as to what the motion is. So maybe just read.
Maybe Ms. Constances can tell me what I should say.
Please read it.
So the amended version of 050L would now read, operation of Sundays is prohibited after 9 p.m. and before 5 a.m. So you'd be moving to adopt that language.
Okay, I so move.
Is there a second?
I second with concern.
Well, that's a second.
If this is the point of discussion, the chair actually, first of all, Chairman Hernandez could not be here today. His father-in-law passed away. He's in New York, and I know that we all send our condolences to the family. He did send me a statement earlier today and asked that I share it with the commission. We've been asked to consider amending our hours of operations for scooters. There is a dispute as to our authority to implement changes aside from the enumerated points in the ordinance and as to the meaning of the language of the ordinance. I understand the scooter companies have proposed a compromise to the hours. I don't have a strong position, yea or nay, about the hours per se, given the proposed compromise. But I have reviewed the letter that the council sponsors to the substitute bill sent to us and their belief as to this commission's authority. While I understand their position, assuming the language is ambiguous, which itself is disputed, I think the relevant legal inquiry is the legislative intent of the council, not necessarily just the sponsors. The bill passed after much compromise and deliberation by the council, and the bill provided a fair amount of discretion to the commission to set out rules for operation. I do believe we have authority to implement rules such as slow zones or no operation zones. I think we have authority to make rules to ensure a city is in compliance with the ADA. Whatever the commission decides to do today, I think we should not be perceived as an agreement that we do not have that authority. He just asked at the appropriate time to read it. That was as appropriate as I knew to make it.
Yes, and my observation would be that if the amendment was approved today, it's actually more constrictive than what Metro Council established in their ordinance 1658. So it would not be perceived, or it should not be perceived, that we are acquiescing our discretion, and rather that we are exercising our discretion in the interest of public safety and convenience. Well, there's a second. Let's more discussion.
Can I make a comment with my second? Is that appropriate? I am concerned with the hours of operation, being that the winter solstice hours, of course, 9 o'clock is extremely dark. Also, inclement weather plays a part in those hours. We're not just talking about rain. We're talking about freezing rain, ice, and again, with the education of the public and how they're using these scooters already, I foresee an increase in accidents and possible fatal injuries during that time. So I do, while we have made a compromise with all parties concerned, I make a second with a strong recommendation that it be revisited as soon as possible.
Ms. Palmer, I know you've got some discussion or comments you want to make.
How do you know?
I just have that feeling. I'm sitting close to you.
Well, so all of you know how I how I feel about the safety aspect of this. We've had person after person after person come in here and tell us, I've been hit by one, I've hit one. We have a gentleman here, it sounds like, who hit two. Sergeant Bork came in here and told us they really need to be limited. You know, we have a special detail of Metro officers now working downtown on Broadway and in that area just to deal with the things that are going on down there. You know, I think if you walk downtown at night, I mean, the dangers are obvious. There's no question about the lack of safety of these things. We have marauding teenagers picking them up at night because it's playtime and the cops aren't out because they're all on Broadway. We have, you know, problems. First of all, they can't even shut them off when they're supposed to, or if they can, they're not. It's like when you tell someone they can go 55, they go 65. And when you tell someone they can go 65, they go 75. So to me, setting an artificial time, I mean, it's an artificial time. What we're supposed to be looking at is what keeps our people safe, what keeps our citizens safe, what keeps our pedestrians safe, what keeps our disabled safe, what keeps our service dogs safe. And they're bad enough during the day. At night, they're just a hazard. And I live there, I walk there every night. I have seen it all. And the companies can't stop them. And they've admitted that they can't stop them in some respects. So, you know, I feel like I need to vote my conscience, and I feel like I was put here to look out for my neighbors and my friends and the people that traverse the sidewalks every day. You know, and all of us, I think, have to examine our own kind of conscience about what has happened and the death that happened. And, you know, I personally don't feel like having a person who works in a bar be able to jump on a scooter to get home outweighs the danger that that person poses at night to pedestrians and even vehicular traffic sometimes. So, you know, council seems to have it's made its decision or you know, have its idea of how this should go, and that's fine. I think we all have to make our own decision based on our own conscience about this issue. I'm so troubled by it. I just, you know, I can't live with the fact that if another person dies, I'm not going to be able to live with that. And maybe some of you can, but I can't. I am disappointed that we're only talking about slow zones on Broadway and 2nd Avenue. Broadway and 2nd Avenue are the places where all the tourists are and all the drunk people are. And if you think that the people who are riding these things the most at night are people trying to get home, that's just fantasy. And all you have to do is come downtown and watch. That's really all you have to do. I commend the scooter companies and council for a compromise. And you know, it troubles me, but everyone's worked very hard to get there. I'm happy to hear that the emergency regulations are temporary. I'm happy to hear that, and that they can be modified, because that was one of our questions as well. But I just want to be on record as saying that, because this is the most important issue that I've faced on this commission, and you know, I'm really, really not going to be able to live with it if someone else dies. I'm just not. So I hope that we can all remember Brady Galkey and remember you know, what we're here for. That's all.
Other comments, thoughts?
Can I have the floor?
Yes, sir.
Move the question.
All right. Anybody have anything else they want to add? Okay. On the floor is a motion that's been seconded to amend Section 050, subsection L of the TLC regulations for shared urban mobility devices to read as operations of SUMDs is prohibited after 9 p.m. and before 5 a.m. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? We have one vote?
Two.
Two, okay. Oh, I didn't hear you. Oh. Okay. All right. The motion passes.
Is that
An abstention.
It is.
And I appreciate the, I'm just going to have to state as the temporary chairperson today that I appreciate everybody's insight, time, and work on this matter. Commissioner Palmer brings up a good point that there was a life lost. I don't know the details of it, but there was a life lost by probably a combination of things. And this commission looks forward to working with the companies, with the council, on hammering out rules and regulations that protect the public and also provide a convenience for the tourist and for other members of our community who use these devices. Mr. Fields, we have a public hearing on the annual hearing for the purpose of consideration of applications, additional pedal vehicle request.
In order for any additional pedal vehicles to be placed on the street, that would include any new companies and/or existing companies that would like additional vehicles. You have to have a public hearing. We have a public hearing once a year for the purposes of hearing those applications for either. Today you have requests for one new pedal carriage company, 2 pedicab companies, and then additional permits for one of your existing companies that you've already licensed.
All right, so there's 4 matters on the agenda for the public hearing.
Yes, sir.
All right, has anybody submitted a request to speak?
Yes.
Thank you. All right. The first one in front of me is a Travis Stowers from Nashville Bike Cab. Mr. Stowers.
Howdy, y'all.
Hi.
I do live in Texas. I live in Galveston, Texas.
Can you pull that mic up a little bit?
Yes.
And introduce yourself. And
My name is Travis Stowers. I live in Galveston, Texas, weirdly enough. Getting ready for hurricane season. Not looking
one of the
forward
few
to
places more humid than Nashville today, hey?
Well, I was telling her, people just keep on telling me how hot it is because I'm from the Midwest. And if one more person tells me how much hotter it is than where I live, I'm going to choke them. Anyways, it's hot where I live. Anyways, I have done pedicabs for 17 years. I've been very successful in putting pedicabs in cities where there are none. Houston, Dallas, Fort Worth, Arlington, Texas, and Indianapolis, Indiana. I also run in College Station and Galveston, Texas also. I also own pedal carriages in Houston and Dallas. And I own 6 of them and just want to expand in Texas there. I do not want to expand here with that. I love pedicabs. Bike bars, pedicabs, 2 different things. I call them bike bars. Like pedicabs give rides from point A to point B. Thus, when you guys shut down the scooters at 9 p.m., pedicabs should be able to swoop up and take the drunks back safely to the hotels so they're not stumbling through the streets and everything else. That's what pedicabs are pretty much designed for. High heels, alcohol has made me a living. Being nice, I grew up on a farm, teaching city kids hard work, teaching kids, I call them kids, I'm 44 years old, just teaching. The first time I ever jumped on a pedicab, I made $300. I was a social worker in Indianapolis. I did this in San Diego. I just thought it was the greatest job ever. I literally quit everything and went full force into pedicabs. Now, I'm at a kind of a crossroads in my life, but I see no pedicabs here. I see a huge opportunity, and I'm just curious why there are no pedicabs here. So I have Ash. She's going to manage here. She's used to be a pedicab driver.
Here.
Would you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. My name's Ashley Pereira. I've lived in Nashville for 10 years. I've been a pedicab driver in Nashville for 3 years. Travis is a great friend of mine. I've ridden for him in Houston. Wonderful guy. I used to ride for Dustin Olson in the Nashville pedicab, and once they went out of business, a lot of us lost our jobs, and I'm working with Travis here to try to provide those opportunities back to the college kids, musicians, and other people that really enjoyed pedicab. And I love that job. I've always loved that job. And as I don't want to be out till 3 in the morning all of the time, I would love to help the opportunity for other people that will and can help provide transportation to those people out on the streets on Broadway. Or tourism during the day, whatever it may be, whether it's the big events where you need to get people from point A to point B out of traffic. That's what I want to provide them to do, because their jobs were gone in an instant last year. And so a lot of us have been trying and fighting for a way to come back and provide that service again to the city.
Mr. Stowers, how many pedicabs are you requesting?
20.
20. Anything else?
I see the niche as a business owner. I see from just getting people to lifts, getting people to Ubers at big events, and 10 a.m. on a Thursday, I can jump on a pedicab and go make money. Like, your city is awesome. Like, I want to be part of it. Like, I don't know. This is my first chance to talk to you all and introduce myself, so I appreciate it, and thank you.
Other commissioners have questions?
I have one. Did I read it right? You want to operate until 4 a.m.?
Yes. Drunk, lush.
So you
drunk
only
rush.
pick up drunks?
No, well, we do everything, but the end of the bar scene and then the stumbling, a lot of, we've been in situations where a lot of the police, here's a drunk, they'll just whistle us over there, just slap the drunk into our pedicab and get them back to this hotel so they don't have to deal with them. I've been in that situation over and over and over again. You want to be part of the community. You want to be, all of a sudden you unleash us. We'll start with 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 riders. Then we'll get up to 10 or 12. And then you got a fleet of guys and girls, ladies, going around. I can't tell you how many fights I've stopped from just, you got a whole fleet of people that know everything. We're concierges. People come up to us. They're asking all sorts of questions. These are things cities pay for, right? But we're a private industry. If we don't know everything, then we don't score the ride. So that's how I teach. I'm one of the good owners in America.
You're asking for 20 permits?
For pedicabs.
Well, each pedicab is a permit, is it not?
You didn't get a certificate, then you would issue a number of ones he could operate.
So I know there has to be a certain amount for you to feasibly get up and going and be able to pay her. I guess the other guys work on commission, but so if you could not get 20, what could you operate with?
12 is my minimum. I just like 20's future proofing.
And I'm just asking.
I don't see 20 out on the streets for years, but you never know.
Can I comment?
Sure.
So to comment about the our operations, just to put it out there, I've been out there personally as a pedicab driver when the bars close at 2:30 at night. And whether it's a college girl or, old, young, man, female, it doesn't matter. There are plenty of people walking alone out on the streets who their phones die. They don't have access to Uber or Lyft. They need a ride home. They're not even from this city. They don't know where they are. I can't tell you how many countless times that I have picked up those kind of people and brought them exactly where they needed to go safely. It is so much harder to find an Airbnb nowadays if your phone's dead and you lose your friends. I've come across countless people in the middle of the night. I've come across single women walking in alleyways at 3:30 in the morning when they should not be. And we are those people. They're like, let us help you. And as far as commission goes, like, I'm doing this out of the love of my heart. Like, I'm not being paid anything certain. This is something that I am doing. I have a day job, so this is something that I'm doing on the side as a commission base as well, or to ride as well, and to help manage these people, because so many of my fellow pedicab drivers lost their job. I lost my job, and I just want to bring that back to them and bring back that service to the city that we once had. That's it.
I have a question for you.
Sir?
Mr. Stowers said he wasn't sure why we had no pedicabs in this town anymore. Do you know why they pulled out?
I personally don't want to speak. I knew Justin as a friend very well, and I think it was just his time to move on. He wanted to do something a little bit different. But as far as pedicab goes, I mean, maybe business wasn't the same at first, but I think it could be super great. I mean, I've worked in Denver as a pedicab driver in the last year. I've worked in Houston with Travis, and I mean, in comparison, like, we're even a better market than Houston at times. So I don't understand why, but there's still opportunity here, and we can make this happen again.
Mr. Stowers, what area are you wanting to work in?
Mostly just downtown.
Which means what?
Downtown, Midtown, Germantown.
All the way to east.
All right, that's a big zone there. Germantown, Midtown.
Right.
The Gulch, down, and then I'm assuming Broadway. And
if there's restrictions, I mean, to sit down and look at a map, if there's restrictions necessary, like the pedicab, like I've been on pedicabs where I pass bicyclists. Like, I'm a giant bicyclist, right? Like, I ride bikes. It's my love in life. It keeps me straight. It keeps me going. So, when you guys start restricting us off the streets, it kind of angers me, because I hate the car culture, and I'm all for automated cars coming because people can't drive anymore. Anyways, long story short, I love pedicabs and I love bicycles. So every street should be allowed to have a bicycle path. And sometimes I even get depressed when they don't even have sidewalks, but that's a whole nother story. We're just focused on pedicabs. But yes, just mostly downtown where the tourists and the hotels are.
well, you submitted quite an application with the finances and the pictures and everything else, so thank you.
I don't look it, but I'm very professional. I love what I do, and it's been a strange, long year. I beat cancer this year. I'm back to mountain biking. I feel like I'm 25 years old again, and this is the love. This is what I love to do, and I hope I get to be part of your community.
Thank you.
Can I say something before you leave? I think there was just to give you a little bit of knowledge as to why those pedicabs aren't on the road. There was a traffic study done as to the speed that those pedicabs can travel in the congestion that we already have in downtown Nashville. Of course, they were not able to travel as fast as the golf carts, which could pretty much go the flow of traffic at the speed that downtown traffic is able to travel, especially during the rush hours and the early morning hours. So there were quite a few restrictions put on those pedicabs, as well as we were trying to reduce the footprint of the plethora of, what do we call them? entertainment, transportainment devices that are downtown. And I know you're not spending yours as transportainment, more or less as a sober ride or a lost puppy ride or whatever. But there, I think it would, you would do yourself some due diligence as to look into those restrictions that are already in place.
With modern, you guys even have it in your ordinance with motors, I can make a pedicab go 30 miles an hour. Like, I can make that happen. But I don't want to make a pedicab go 30 miles an hour. I like the slow speed, the 7 miles, the 10 miles an hour. Two, I've been told in Houston, especially around big events, when we got pedestrians walking and we got cars flying, don't assume that everybody driving that car is sober. So the cops like us because we slow down the drunks and get them out of their area real fast, because drunks, pedicabs slow it down, kind of just slows down that, we're only working, yeah.
I'm not sure, with great deal of respect, we probably don't need much help slowing down traffic downtown right now.
Yeah, I got you. Well, I've been downtown all summer and everything. Some of the streets are based off of buffalo trails and stuff like that. Like, I understand I understand cities and streets and everything else, but like, as a business owner in pedicabs, like, the pedicabs find their own little niche and find their own little holes. There's no infrastructure needed. There's no signage needed. You will get 0 complaints. It's there. I mean, the jobs are there. You just have to provide the permits for us.
I'm not accepting nor denying. I was just trying to give you some information.
Yeah. I got you.
Can I comment on your comment? So you're saying that the problem was that the pedicabs could not keep up with the traffic? Was that
causing traffic to slow?
okay? I see.
But you guys have 21 pedal carriages that go 5 miles an hour that are as wide as this. And a pedicab is so maneuverable.
And we've restricted them as well.
Right, but 21 is insane. Like, that's just, I've never seen a market have more pedal carriages in my life, right? I'm just like, we have.
Well, we're the number 2 market for rides.
There's not another city in the country like Nashville.
With a guy with a tractor and I grew up on a farm. A tractor in downtown, that's insane. Right? But I'm just like,
And we can go faster than them.
The pedicabs are the most normal, will be the most normal, weird, it's not here. I don't know why. The pedicabs are everywhere in every city. Does that make sense?
Can I ask a technological question? Your bikes are all non-electric?
They can be electric and they cannot be electric. I can make them either or.
So we don't have any, excuse my ignorance, do we have any regulations? I know we have regulations about pedicabs. Do they deal with speed or?
We don't limit the speed. I think we do allow small electric assist motors.
Okay. So
I don't think we had any operating with small electric assist.
right. We did have some in the past. Excuse my ignorance, but how many do we have in the past? Do you remember?
The pedicab?
Yeah.
We had one company. We started out with 2 companies. I think they ended up with around 30 total vehicles.
Okay. And under state and city law, are these considered bicycles?
They're actually considered state law rickshaws.
Rickshaws?
Yes, there's a specific state law that allows local government to regulate rickshaws and pedicabs. And the rickshaw definition is more like what we call pedicabs, and the pedicab definition was actually broad enough to encompass the pedal carriages.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Fields, as I look at this 4 different requests here, the ones that are actually like rickshaws, that's Nashville Bike Cab and Rock and Roll Rides?
Correct.
And the total amount being requested is 20 by Nashville Bike Cab and 1 by Rock and Roll Rides, right?
Correct.
Okay. And then Bride Ride and Music City Crawler are looking for the Pedal carriages, yes. And the total they're requesting there is Bride Ride wants 2, and Music City Crawlers requesting 2.
2 additional, yes.
Okay. All right. Let's see. I have a written request by Music City Crawler for a request to speak. And someone raised their hand in the back there. If you'll give me a moment, I'm going to open it to the public in just a moment, okay? Okay, that's right, yep. Yep. All right, if you wouldn't mind, well, let's do Rock and Roll Ride since you are very similar to the ones we just heard, okay?
And I could perhaps answer.
Hold on until you get up to the mic, okay? Thank you.
And I could perhaps answer a couple questions too in terms of my personal experience with this whole pedicab thing. And
well, why don't you first start by telling us why you want us to grant a certificate for one certificate for your company first.
Well, to be honest, it was after I'd applied for my permit, I found out that Ash and Travis were also applying, who are 2 colleagues of mine. I've worked festivals with Ash. I've worked with Ash in Nashville, and I'd always heard of Travis. And so we were both kind of like, okay, cool, 2 companies. It's kind of how it was set up before. My friend Mark and Kelsey had a very small operation that they owned their one bike. And
what's Kelsey's last name?
I'm not sure. Silverstein, yeah.
Thank you.
But, you know, I had been discouraged from applying, that it was a lost cause, that, you know, the scooters were ruling, and that the traffic study that had been done, that there was no way we would be approved. But my position was that I did work for, I worked for several companies in which the company that was established here with 20-plus bikes that were rarely out on the streets, believe it or not. I was working Pilgrimage, and Dustin laid it on us that they were trading the pedicab permits for pedal tavern permits. So I was amazed that, you know, in terms of the traffic study information that I had about pedicabs potentially causing congestion, that was the case. So as Ash described, it was the second time I was put out of the job in working in pedicabbing, and in a job that I started doing in New Orleans in 2011 under the same company that had come here. And so basically, I finally had the funds, an investor, Bart, who can't be here today, but he was interested in the business, and I've been riding festivals, music festivals, where we all bring our own pedicab that we own and work under the insurance umbrella of this company, and we operate there. I've had to go out of town to work with my pedicab the past 2 years because Dustin traded the pedal tavern permits, and I'd gone through the process of getting my permit, and I didn't have a job. So I started doing the festivals, and I figured it might be worth a try to apply for one bike, one permit, a bike that I own with my experience in doing this, and so that I don't have anyone telling me that I can't work, and kind of using this as a niche sort of industry. I sent everyone a letter yesterday to sort of introduce ourselves and what we were proposing, because I think that the clear issues that you guys have are traffic congestion, carbon footprint, safety, and we saw it as, you know, we try one pedicab that's a 5-seater pedicab that's motorized. It operates and moves as fast as a golf cart. And from my experience with pedicabbing, with tourists and whatnot, everyone says that that was the best part of their weekend, that they'll never forget Nashville, that it's part of the experience of the city that has grown to be very tourism-based. So I think that it's a great thing to have downtown, and you have people that are operating something that aren't intoxicated and that have experience and that can help people whose phones have died. And I know this because I drive a golf cart right now in the interim of owning my own vehicle and company and operating. And so it's the same kind of thing. Yes, sir.
Is this yours?
Yes.
This is motorized?
Yes, sir. It's it can go up to, well, if you get a really strong motor, you can go faster. But with the hills, and so another thing about the motors, I don't think it's good to have pedicabs without motors in the city, because when I first started working for the company here, they didn't have motors, and I was giving a ride to two gentlemen up 5th Avenue without a motor. I have really strong legs, and but two large drunk men, you know, my entire weight on this bike, we were rolling back, and one of them tried to grab the tire. I think I saw smoke. They were laughing, but I'm like, this is a safety concern, you know. This is not, I need to be able to get up this hill, and Nashville is hilly downtown. So the pedal assist, you know, is a necessary thing for the pedicabs. I think that in flat cities like New Orleans, Austin, Texas is now approving motorized pedicabs. And so whether it's, I fully endorse Travis and Ash, and I would hope that I can appeal my case as a musician. You know, my business plan is to try this out for a year. I would solely operate the pedicab at my own company here and not pose issues. I've worked downtown Nashville for 2-3 years. And anyway, my business idea is that we try it out for a year with one, and if it works, if you know, nothing, I don't think anything would ever happen on my bike. It's safe, and it's a 5-seater in that it's contained. A lot of the 5-seaters have benches where people are on the back and people can fall off. This is one that is like a carriage. Anyway, this is my record. I'm a musician here in Nashville, in the Music City, and this has been my day job for the past 5 years that has allowed me to supplement my life and pay rent and also pay for music endeavors. And
you would be the one. Who is Bart Walton?
Bart could not be here today. He is my business partner and who is the MBA. And
as a driver, would he be driving as well?
He was interested in that. If I was sick for any reason, he would obtain his pedal permit because he basically is the investor in the operation and partially owns the bike.
So let me ask you a question. One of the things we have to consider is the public necessity for putting additional transportation vehicles on the streets. And we always balance that against the inconvenience to traffic or the flow of traffic, things like that. Give me your view as to why there's a public necessity, why the public needs additional pedicab or any pedicabs on the streets now.
I guess the same reason as to why there would be a public necessity for a boat vehicle giving people rides.
I'm not comparing apples to oranges. Just you're making an application here for this pedicab. Tell me why our public needs it.
It's part of your tourism industry. People enjoy this ride. It can give people transportation. It's a 5-seater pedicab. I can help get people off Broadway, deliver them to their hotels, and provide them an experience. I play honky-tonk music on my pedicab. I'm a real-life musician. They love my story. This is part of their experience of visiting the city, and I think that it is a memorable part of their visit and good for your tourism industry.
Where would you want to operate?
Downtown, same as the golf carts, you know, downtown, midtown, Titans games. The same as the boat, the tractor, the party bus, you know. I see this as a niche sort of ride the same as these guys are, and that's why I
What
applied
hours
for
are you
one.
envisioning operating?
The same as the golf cart and the party buses, until 4 a.m. I would be myself operating this, and I'm very protective of this bike that I've just bought, and I don't want anyone else potentially breaking a throttle or whatnot. But it would be me. At 4 a.m. is when, the bars let out at 3, and people need rides. And I just want to operate legally in the city and continue without bothering anyone or posing a problem, especially to traffic, which I didn't understand how scooters were approved and pedicabs weren't allowed because I've seen people on scooters in the main thoroughfare of traffic, which blew my mind, and the pedal taverns. A pedicab can actually stay on side streets. We never really go on Broadway, but you can either weave or stay in traffic, but it's the same.
Have you ever had any accidents in this?
No, sir.
No accidents?
Any other questions? Thank you, Ms. Lovett.
Yeah, I was going to show you one more thing. I apologize. I know you guys have a large agenda. This book is called Fortunes, Fiddles, and Fried Chicken, and it's about the Nashville business history, and it's really interesting if you guys have not read it. But once again, I'm appealing as a small business here, and we are in a city that is booming, and I think that it is a really important and a special thing if Nashville can, amongst all of the industry, support its small local people that are part of its tourism economy and the music city. And if I could get a company up and running that could provide musicians and students, mainly musicians who are here, trying to get a name out for themselves, this provides people that opportunity to connect with their to build a fan base. You can connect with people and give people an experience that's unique and original. And furthermore, we had one pedicab company here. We had pedicabs before. I don't see the reason why, with the perhaps limitation now of the scooters, why we can't have this economical, fun operation running.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Would the commissioners like to take up first the pedicabs before we go on to the pedal carriages, or do you want to take them all together?
Again, if I can ask a question, excuse my historical ignorance. Have we treated them the same in terms of licensing in the past, or?
Well, from a standpoint, they're in the same chapter, so typically the same rules and regulations apply. There are some sections that'll talk specifically about a pedal cab and some about a pedal carriage, but
Like in terms of the
equipment and things like that separately. But otherwise, we would operations, licensing, insurance requirements, so forth are the same.
The requirements in terms of granting new certificates is very much what the chair stated, or vice chair, excuse me, temporary chair. In making you find that there's a public necessity and convenience for a new certificate, and in making that finding, you take into consideration the number of pedicabs and pedal carriages already in operation, whether existing service is adequate to meet the public need, the character, experience, financial condition, and responsibility of the applicant, and such criteria as may be adopted by the MTLC and its rules.
So in the past, we've had pedal cabs.
Yeah, and that criteria applies to both types of companies, yes.
But we have in the past issued certificates for pedal cabs.
Yeah, the vehicles have permits associated with them
as well. So when you grant a certificate, you would specify like so many pedal carriage permits or so many pedicab permits. Is that right?
Well, in light of what Ms. Costonis just read, that we are to consider the public necessity and convenience by the number of pedal carriages and pedal cabs that are on the road, perhaps it is more prudent that we consider them all together and just hear everybody on the public hearing.
I would agree.
Okay, back to the attorney for Music City Crawler.
Good afternoon, Director, Commissioners. My name is Curtis Harrington, and I'm an attorney here in Nashville, law firm of Farmer, Purcell, White, Lassiter. And I'm here this afternoon on behalf of Music City Crawler. And with me today is its owner, Susan Pizzatola. Music City Crawler currently holds one pedal carriage permit, which it has held since 2015. Before you today, seeking an award of 2 additional permits. Music City Crawler has appeared before the Commission in years 2016, 2017, and 2018, seeking additional permits, all of which were denied by the Commission after determining, as I understand it, that public necessity did not allow for or require additional permits. It is our hope today to present to the Commission support for our position, which is that the award of additional permits to Music City Crawler is proper under MCL 675030 as the demands of the marketplace, public need, and downtick in construction projects along the service route support a finding of public convenience and necessity, and that Music City Crawler is fit, willing, and able to provide a pedal carriage service and is worthy of the additional requested permit issuance. I will admit that we, as probably any applicant, this is my first time in front of the Commission, is probably a bit limited in the argument that we can make before you without detailed independent traffic studies or other expert reports. However, we believe that the real objective data and input that we do have and are presenting before you today is hopefully enough in your eyes to meet the standards and requirements in the Metro Code of Laws and justify the award of permits requested by my client. To jump right in, you should have before you and attached to Music City Crawler's application a document dated August 22nd, 2019, which was drafted and submitted by my client, Ms. Pizzatola. The first bullet, which is a statistic obtained from the Nashville Convention and Visitors Bureau, tells us that Nashville catered to over 15 million tourists in 2018. That number is actually 15.8 million, according to the Bureau, with numbers expected to increase in 2019 and 2020. I'm not here to bore you with statistics, so that number's great. It tells us that a lot of folks are coming to town, but how do we translate that figure into what matters to the Commission and what is before you in terms of the standard that you're looking for today? How do we translate that to public desire, need, demand, and necessity of pedal carriages without burden on our transportation system? I think there are 3 major points here that we'll focus on that we see as relevant and support our argument. The first, as it pertains to public necessity and demand, my client can testify that customers and potential customers are telling her on a regular basis that the pedal carriage specifically is the first choice experience that they want when they compare it to other services out there, like the trailers pulling hot tubs and horse carriages and in the past pedicabs and so on and so forth. There's something very unique about the pedal carriage. People feel connected to the environment, and they simply think that it's a unique, different, and fun activity. Another point worth noting is that the pedal carriage can service more people than other slow-moving vehicles, like the horse carriage. It's nearly twice as fast, yet not as large and perhaps disruptive as some of the other slow-moving vehicles that are on the streets. So Music City Crawler will tell you, and has records to support, that even just advertising and offering the service of one pedal carriage and the limited available time slots and rides that go along with offering just one pedal carriage, the company is turning away approximately 1/3 of the customers who contact the company for bookings. So these are thousands of people being turned away every year. In addition, requests for booking are now coming in as much as 12 months in advance. And I only say this to convey that even with the 19 permits existing in Metro Nashville, at least as far as my client's business is concerned, the demand and public need and desire is certainly there, and would support several more additional carriages on operating in downtown Nashville. The second point relates to the justification for additional permits being evidenced perhaps by my client's periodic approaching the commission for an award of temporary permits, and the commission being kind enough to award these to my client in the past. On several occasions during big tourism weekends, the commission has been kind enough to award Music City Crawler a second permit, which it has operated responsibly and without issue. Music City Crawler believes that the demand for its service, not only during peak weekends but throughout its operating season, would support the award of the additional permits being requested today by Music City Crawler, and further believes that it has demonstrated to the Commission its fitness and responsibility in operating its business. And Ms. Pizzatola just informed me that she's never had one accident or incident in her years of operation since 2015. The third and final point we'd like to focus on is the state of construction along the Music City Crawler route downtown. I think my lovely assistant's going to pass out something if you don't mind. So the downtick in the state of construction along the downtown area, and specifically Music City Crawler route. Music City Crawler is seen, based upon the running of its business and carriages downtown, the evidence of this downtick. And the Music City Crawler route begins on 3rd Avenue and operates between 1st and 5th Avenues. Yesterday, I pulled these construction maps that are before you now, reflecting completed, proposed, and ongoing construction projects in the downtown area. So if we specifically look at the areas between 1st and 5th, which are the Music City Crawler route, we can see that most everything is built out, at least for the time being, and there's not a lot of construction going on. And these maps are obtained from Nashville Business Journal and Nashville Convention and Visitors Bureau. Specifically along her route, beginning on 3rd, there are 2 items that are noted as ongoing, but I believe those have been the Moxie Hotel, and there's a restaurant. I forget the name of it, but I believe those are now complete. So that virtually eliminates construction, ongoing construction on her route. In closing, Music City Crawler respectfully requests that the award of additionally requested permits are proper under the Metro Code of Laws, as Music City Crawler has demonstrated the public demand and desire for additional pedal carriage permits, and specifically that Music City Crawler conducts business the right way and has a long history of doing so, with only one pedal carriage in operation. We're happy to address any concerns or questions the Commission may have, but that's our argument here today before you.
Is it my understanding at this time you actually you still own that second pedal tavern, I'm sorry?
Yes, sir. I own multiple. I operate in another city as well.
So is it your intention, if you're granted a permit, 2 permits, whatever, that you would still have a backup bike here as well?
Yes, sir.
Okay. That was my only question.
How many do you have right now?
In total, I own 6.
No, I mean, how many
I have
certificates do you have,
I have
and how
one
many are you allowed to
certificate.
operate?
I have 1 certificate, 1 permit, and I'm allowed to operate 1.
Okay. And occasionally we've given you authorization to use the second one. Is that what I heard your
Yes,
lawyer
sir.
say?
Yes.
Okay. Counselor, I appreciate that you have identified the criteria that we have to look at for a determination of whether it's a public necessity and convenience. Could you give me, you gave a great presentation, would you give me a bullet point list of why you think there's a public necessity and convenience now for additional pedal carriage for your client.
And as mentioned,
bullet point.
Sure. In addition, I'll tell you that everything that I know and everything supporting my argument for the public necessity is from Ms. Pizzatola and from, what she would, quote unquote, testify to regarding what she's hearing, on a almost daily basis. And again, just those statistics regarding, what people are telling her specifically when she does have to turn them away because she only has, one and can't service, the demand coming from the marketplace, so to speak. Again, as many as 12 months in advance. They're often disappointed. She doesn't know. She doesn't ask whether they've contacted other companies or why necessarily, they want to come to her company. But I think, assuming that other companies are facing, who are limited, are facing, the same problem, I just hear her speak to how significant the demand is.
Well, you mentioned there's about 16 million tourists that came into Nashville last year. You gave us a percentage of how many people she was having to turn away. What was that
She's
again?
turning away about a third.
A third.
Yeah.
And so there's people wanting to use her carriage, but she's having to turn them away, a third. Sure. And then you've also brought the point up that the construction downtown, particularly on the route, has been reduced or completed.
Seems to have slowed a bit, just based on this objective data that I can find.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Other questions?
Yes, I'd like to ask Ms. Pizzatola a question, if I could.
Yes, sir.
I know that you go out and you follow your carriages sometimes, and you film, and we appreciate that. Given the state of your route and traffic as it is, could you tell us that adding another pedal tavern or two pedal taverns in your route would not affect on a noticeable scale the flow of traffic or public safety in the area that you'd be operating?
Yes, sir. And I can go back to talk about the second permits you guys issued me. If you recall, or I refresh your memory, I believe one was back in May for a doctor's convention. Operating that second bike, and we picked up parties at the Valentine located in the center of Broadway, made no significant difference. Nobody noticed or knew. Was another bike out there in traffic flow? Nothing. Made no difference. We did the August 3rd on a Saturday in the middle of the day, 12 and 2 o'clock. We did 2 of the pink bridal shows. Gift tickets they gave away, ran both bikes back to back for the 2-hour blocks there, and no significant difference on a Saturday.
Were able to find sufficient pick-up and drop zones without having to wait in areas that would congest the traffic?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We begin, my office and everything's located on North 3rd Avenue, South 3rd Avenue, and we come down, we begin down by Big Machine, who we have a relationship with, and that's our pickup, loading, and unloading there. And I have relations with about a dozen different establishments downtown. So if there happens to be an issue, if an Uber is blocking us or something, we go to another establishment. I was just telling Curtis, right when we walked in, before we did Pledge of Allegiance, John with Nudies at Bar called me, and I was sitting here asking me to give him a call back for me to stop at another location for him. So the flow of traffic and the movement and us stopping at a location is not an issue at all.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, I have no other request to speak. 2 hands went up.
We didn't pull one out. I think that's probably the 4th application.
Is that Bride Ride?
Yes. Good afternoon.
Well, I thought you were going to be silent here today.
Thought wrong.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Whitney Williams, and this is my co-partner, Lauren Staley. Appreciate the chance to be here.
in June, actually, of this year, Lauren and I were talking, and she is a successful entrepreneur. She's owned her own business for over 10 years. They do custom wedding invitations and custom branding. So she deals with a lot of brides all the time. I myself work in the real estate development industry. I've spent a lot of time outside of Nashville and moved back here 2 years ago. And I found myself saying, I want to get more connected with Nashville. Currently, I'm in Denver quite a bit, working on large developments there. So we kind of got to talking and thought there really is a void in this market as we looked out of Lauren's Midtown apartment and see all the pedal taverns go by. So we quickly started to do some research, and what we very quickly uncovered was the permitting process. And I said, listen, if we're potentially serious about doing this bride ride thing and the concept there's a mock-up in the application that shows you what we're thinking, we need to get started. So we very quickly identified a potential fabricator and an insurance person. Lauren has business operational experience. I have a lot of experience in capital markets, both with lenders and investors. So while she kind of took brand and marketing, I took the permitting, a couple local banks and local investors to see if this would be something that, if we could actually get a venture together, is it something that people were interested in? And I said, here's what I think our need is. I think there's a void in the market. The average bride's age is 28. 80% of Nashville Pedal Tavern's business are bachelor and bachelorette parties. A millennial right now, as someone who's invested in portfolio companies, is highly interested in authenticity and experience. They want activation. So we thought we could provide here is within this pedal tavern business, a new niche which is catered towards bachelorette parties. They're coming here, as the gentleman before said, our visitors last year, based on the Nashville hospitality numbers, are 15.2. Direct spending increased last year to $7 billion, with visitors staying an average of 3.6 days. So we definitely see the need for it. As locals ourselves have used some of these companies before, when you try to book with a large group, you oftentimes get turned away.
I've personally was denied by 2 companies trying to book for a friend's 40th birthday.
So it's definitely something that, as we started to do some quick supply and demand data research, you can tell that both, it's like people that have tried to use it and not book for work functions, it's harder to get it for more people, and then you get turned away. So Nashville Pedal Tavern, they have a lot of times a 3 to 4 week wait period. So it's not just something that you fly into Nashville and off the cuff could book it. So we definitely see the supply and demand is there, but we also see just a void kind of in the 80% demographic that you're seeing, especially with that age range, that they like an activation and something different. And I think the mock-up and what we're trying to illustrate shows how we would more gear on the marketing and brand side and use Lauren's influence there. That's it. Do you guys have questions?
Pedal Tavern, different look.
Exactly. Look, exactly. New company.
Questions, comments, concerns?
No, I guess my question is, do you think that this company can sustain itself with just the selected just for bride rides?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we've talked about this is where we would start, and we've knocked around some other ideas to capture some other markets. So I do a lot of underwriting. I ran basic cash flow numbers on the assumptions of even if you could only capture 60% of the market at 5 rides a day, that it's a profitable company within 10 months.
Would it be a profitable company with 5 rides with only 1 carriage?
Yes, with a backup. So the thought being that you have 1, and I ran it at 1.5. So seeking 2 permits, and I ran a model based on 1.5 usage. So you couldn't operate 2 at full time. What if something goes wrong with one of them? And then, yes, at only 1 ride, it is still profitable.
What if 1 permit was granted, and would your company be able to sustain itself?
Yes.
Okay. And Mr. Fields, if I'm correct, there's nothing wrong with having one permit and a backup carriage.
As long as they don't operate them at the same time.
That's the same thing we had before with the previous request, one at a time. Okay. Other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Fields, I would really appreciate your input on these applications and the numbers and what your thoughts are, given your experience.
You see, closing the public hearing or my part of the public hearing?
I apologize. There's another hand up. Come on up. We are going to have to move along with these public hearings.
I apologize. I didn't get here in time to present a written request. My name is Brian Gleason with the Nashville Pedal Tavern. I'll make this brief. A lot of you I've spoke to over the years. We've been here. We were the ones that really pushed for regulation about 5-6 years ago. There's a few things here. We were one of the very first of this industry in the country. We're very versed on this. We were the 4th city in the country to have one of these businesses. We got here really on the ground floor. There wasn't anything like that around. Currently, I am the industry expert for North America in this industry. I work for the new franchise called Pedal Pub. They own the 80% of the majority of these companies in North America. And I present in a lot of these meetings for other cities. There's been about a dozen other cities I've been called in to be an expert and asked to talk on this. I agree. I'm sorry, I forget his name, but the amount of permits and vehicles we do have operating on the pedal carriage side in Nashville is far beyond what any other market has. I have physically visited and been a part of probably about 40 other locations in this industry. And I think the real question here is not demand. Nashville Pedal Tavern, we could ask for 30 more permits, and I would feel comfortable in our investment. We haven't asked for a permit in 4 years. Reason being is not because of the demand. It is because it is being extremely hard to operate in Nashville. And it's not because of the people, the good actors. It's not because of the people that are going through the process and the regulatory system. It's because all of the other people that are kind of congesting downtown, we tend to get lumped together with. And we have, in the beginning, we had plenty of places to park. We used to stop on Broadway, let people off. We had about 15 different partner locations we could pull up to their front door, send customers in the door. We can't do that anymore. We've had to change our model from being supportive to the other businesses because we cannot park. The only place in downtown Nashville we can park currently is a place that we had to pull a permit for, and they have closed off permits to that. So my argument is basically just to take into consideration that beyond competition, this is not a competition thing. I'm very supportive to entrepreneurs, and I really do appreciate the time and energy that I've heard today put into analytics and the markets and what's driving Nashville, and also the need. But it really isn't the need. It's really about the two words, necessity and convenience. Right, so the necessity isn't based off demand. I think it's based off what our city can handle, and I think we're all seeing those struggles right now. And I'm becoming very active in on the council level and beyond in the mayor's office, trying to introduce other alternatives to some of these problems downtown because I want to be proactive. I don't want to be reactive anymore. So, with that consideration, I just want you to understand my understanding of that, and also that this isn't based off of a competitive thing, like I said. Otherwise, we'd be here asking for permits. We sell out months in advance. We could have hundreds
How
more
many
customers.
permits do you have right now?
With 10.
How many?
10.
10. And then the other group that used to come down here historically with you, how many do they have?
There's, as far as I know, there's 4 operators. There's ourselves with 10. I believe Sprocket Rocket has 9.
Yeah, 9. Okay. Yep.
And to.
So that's our 19 that are out there right now.
Well, that's why I get a little curious on where I've heard conflicting numbers constantly. Because I know that there's a few other permits that were issued.
Well, we know that
last year.
Music City Crawler has 1,
Correct.
So we're now up to 20.
Right. So I would like to ask that you guys look into that, because I'm hearing a lot of conflict on the numbers.
But you have 10.
Yes.
And
we've had 10 since 4 years ago.
Yeah. And Sprocket Rocket, I believe, is at 9. Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. And one more item is Ms. Pensacola has been operating here for a long time. I feel like that she's been requesting, and she's a good operator. My real concern is people that have no understanding of the struggles and the pains of the city and how to really operate this type of business. I host training for new markets here in Nashville, and I also travel to train. The learning curve to training these operators before they get started is really intense, and it needs to be before they can operate a business. So I just hope that you take that into consideration, too, as someone that may be great with the analytics, but really knowing the operational and with our city, the struggles that are out there right now, too.
Mr. Leeson,
Yes.
Just a quick question. We spoke last time you were here about
Yes.
the kind of the efforts that you've been undertaking with the others in your industry to work on some of the problems we've had downtown.
Correct.
Was Ms. Pizzatola part of that too?
I don't remember if she spoke at that. She may not have been here at that meeting. I believe Emmett from Sprocket Rocket got up and spoke on behalf of his company as well.
Yeah. I mean your efforts that you have been working on with the other companies that you talked about.
Yes, and I don't want to get into too much detail on that right now. I don't want to speak too much on behalf of other people that aren't here right now. But it's something we're really passionate about, and that's really an industry standard of code of conduct that really isn't there right now. And I feel that it's really easy to go start a hot tub, start a tractor, start a DJ tractor if you haven't seen that yet. It's basically a DJ going down the road with a massive sound system and people climbing rafters going down the street. The good actors, the regulated actors here, are really getting hurt by those businesses that aren't regulated. So, I mean, that's not really part of this discussion. I know that's not under your guys' realm. I hope it is someday. But we really want to help to try to bring this back to being really a wholesome, good for the city activity. And I'm not saying anybody new wouldn't do that as well. I just hope you're taking that into consideration, that maybe we wait until some of those things are really buttoned up before we talk about expansion. And at which time I would love to come to you guys and ask for more permits as well, because the demand is there, and we see it as well. Okay. Thank you.
All right, this time I'm going to close the public hearing and leave it open to motions, discussions among the commissioners. Oh, I forgot. I was asking Mr. Fields for his input.
One of the great phenomenons Nashville has experienced the last few years is pedal carriages. I won't say pedicabs, because we did have them, and they didn't do very well in terms of being able to sustain it. But the pedal carriages in particular have been an interesting thing for us to work with. I've spoken with people outside the industry that don't operate the pedal carriages at all. They do work with them, and it's amazing the amount of people who want to come to Nashville and ride. And I mean this with great respect to the industry, but to pedal and pedal and pedal and pedal all around downtown and sweat, and but they have a good time. And the strange part is the repeat business. It's not the one time. It's the folks that say, that was great, we're going to come back next year. And I'm thinking, I know people that go to Disney World, but they're saying we're going to come to Nashville, and part of the reason they want to come is the transportainment that you're responsible for. I think several, including Mr. Heatherly, who operates one of the tractor companies, who has worked with us, we've certainly worked trying to understand how that part works. We have so much going on downtown, I'm always reluctant to say we can really handle some more. By the same token, we do have companies that have worked hard and probably deserve a chance. New companies, again, I think, I'm not going to say they can't come and do a great job. What I can say is, is we do have changes coming. There's another study that's being done. I believe it's out of the police department. That's a safety study. And we're not a part of that. Fortunately, we've got plenty to study right now on our own. But they are looking at the interaction of traffic with pedestrians, with the commercial traffic, parking. My understanding it's an expansive study. I'm not sure the state that study's in. When it's complete, we might have better information. But, right now we have lots of traffic. We have lots of traffic. I'm not sure loading and unloading on Broadway is one of the great challenges we have. Our office has been asked by the police to work with that. Uber and Lyft, which is outside your authority, as you know, are cruising the area as well. When you put it together, there's tons of congestion. So what I would advise you is to bear that in mind before you make any decision. And, while I'm very sympathetic to entrepreneurs, my family's business, when they started before I was born way back, my father decided he could be a dry cleaner. He went to Omaha to learn how and came back and did it. And we survived with it a lot of years until it fell to technology like a lot of other things have. So I'm very sympathetic, but again, I bear that in mind. I would look at the ones that exist, and I would consider, I think Ms. Pizzatola has worked hard, especially the last couple of years. We had some issues to start with, and she'll tell you we did. We had some very interesting conversations on Saturday nights and Sunday morning early over the years. By the same token, I've not had those calls in quite a long time. But I also can't just, in good faith, say we need, please, put more on the streets. And I know that sounds very wishy-washy, but that's the great challenge, and that's one of the reasons this is one of the hardest commissions to work with in the city, because you have the challenge of transportation and transportainment. And you're pioneering every day. You're pioneering something on transportainment that the other cities are not doing.
What about pedal cabs?
I think pedicabs, the problem that they had before, at least what they described to me, I was not in the industry and I could be disputed, is there were issues of getting around downtown from a traffic standpoint. They were stuck in traffic. They can maneuver, but the last time I saw them maneuvering, no disrespect to anyone, you got to stay in the lane of traffic. You can't split the lane of traffic, and I pulled many of them to the side, sent many of them home for the night, saying, no, you cannot drive two vehicles in one lane. One vehicle, one lane. So while I appreciate the idea of moving around and being able to manipulate, that's also one of the problems that we have. And the city doesn't need additional working around. Many times the working around becomes the problem. I wish, when I visited other cities with wider streets and with wider loading areas, pedicabs worked very well, or seemed to, but they were also very flat. And they had much less traffic.
Do you say that in consideration with the powered vehicle that we have in application?
I think a powered vehicle does change it a little bit. An electric assist can move up a hill. As I've had many talks with many of the riders, and over the years, and asked the question, how do you get up 2nd Avenue? And they work really hard. A motor getting up 2nd Avenue would help. The vehicle that was described, a 5-person vehicle, I would assume is very heavy. And I know Ms. Lovett said she was very strong in her legs. It'd take a lot to get 5 people up, but with an electric assist, I'm assuming that would certainly make it easier.
Thank you.
All right, open for discussion. Motions? Thoughts?
Can you add anything, Billy, to what we heard about why the pedicabs went away, other than he just went out of business, or?
What I can only say anecdotally, nothing administratively that I could show. When I would speak with either management or people around the industry, they would have, they didn't have riders. They weren't consistent. One of the problems is while they're great for events, they also can't necessarily get that close to events. You can't use the Siegenthaler Bridge, for instance. The scooters can't use the Siegenthaler Bridge. Are not supposed to use the Siegenthaler Bridge. When you start stopping traffic flow from back and forth across the river to vehicles, while they may provide a service, if they can't get there, it's not providing a service. If I would encourage you, any time the commissioners would like to come with us, just some of the special events and work at the loading and unloading areas. It's certainly. We have to be very creative working with the police and the events themselves to try to get people as close to that event as possible. Because we're not trying to stop business. We're just we do have that level of public safety, and we work with the police and follow their guidance on that.
I feel like this is really hard because I want to support business people and especially local business people and young people who are trying to, make a living and work on their music career, for example. I am, of course, concerned about the congestion. I do think that Ms. Pizzatola has been a very good citizen. She has been here before and asked for permits that we've not been able to give. I watch the pedal taverns really carefully because I'm downtown, and they're very well behaved, and I have to.
And you and I have had many conversations long before you came to the commission about sometimes when they weren't well behaved.
Sometimes when they weren't well behaved, but I have found
way in the past.
Way in the past, and I have found that they've been very well behaved. All of them, and I see Miss Pizzatola go by sometimes, and I see Pedal Tavern all the time. But I feel like they've been really good citizens and very willing to work both together and with you. So I'm inclined, just limiting it right now to that one, I'm inclined to be in favor of granting Ms. Pizzatola an additional, at least one. That's my thought on that one.
If you would make a motion, I would second that.
Or you think of one? Just one. I will make a motion to grant an additional permit to Music City Crawler, one additional permit for Pedal Tavern. Is it
with a
pedal carriage?
As described, pedal carriage as described in her application?
Yes, as described in her application.
I second that motion.
All right, there's a motion on the floor. Any discussion?
Call the question.
All right, I do have one question first, though. Is that is that motion dealing strictly with Music City Crawler, or is that dealing with the entire consideration of the pedal vehicle request?
I'm just dealing with Music City Crawler at this moment.
All right, there's been a motion, there's been a second, and I'll renew the call to question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. All right, then let's go down the line here. Top of the list is Bride Ride. Discussion?
While Bride Ride has a great, I love the in-depth information that we got on our city and the dynamics of it and the niche that we're missing. I do not feel a need of public necessity to feel that niche, weighing it against what we already have in place as it's fulfilling the necessity that's there, especially being that we already have vested, tried and true vendors in place. So it is, I would make a motion to deny Bride Ride's application for a permit.
Is there a second?
I'll second it. I think I agree with you, Mr. Collar.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Motion passes. All right, Nashville Bike Cab and Rock and Roll Rides. I would make a suggestion that we consider Nashville Bike Cab and Rock and Roll Rides together because they're offering the same. We can split them up, but I think in the discussions we ought to consider them together because they're offering the same form of transportation there. I do like the idea of bringing pedicabs back into the community. I did see them being used. I don't particularly care for anecdotal evidence of what I have seen, but the truth of the matter is they were being used quite a bit around my office area downtown. And they do offer a form of transportation that we don't have in this community right now. I would encourage some consideration of authorizing some of them. But I'm not able to make a motion and as the vice chair today, so.
Well, we had, was it Nashville Bike Cab that was from Texas?
Nashville Bike Cab, correct. With a local operator, I believe.
Right. I would not feel comfortable with giving that permit of 20 of them, being that I could see that. I know you said it would probably take you a while to get to that number, but seeing that you are operating in multiple cities and you do have that capability, I could see that pouring into the streets pretty fast. You did say that you could operate with a minimum of, is it 7 or 12? 12. I would be comfortable with that, as well as the one for Rock and Roll Rides. I would say that the problem that we had in the past was the speed of them, and that we are not Texas. We are hillbillies, hills. So that I would request that they be power assisted.
Do we have the authority to make that a requirement?
Hang on just a sec. I was there a second ago. Let me go back to it.
He has the capability.
Yeah, I just don't know about the definition.
So there is a list that specifically describes the types of equipment that each type of pedicab must have at a minimum. Once again, we have the at a minimum language. Let me see. I was there a second ago. Okay. Yeah, that's pedal carriages. Hang on. And it says at the end of that list, if electric motor assistance is installed, so that if suggests it's optional, it must meet all manufacturer standards and be inspected by a certified mechanic on an annual basis. So it is not required by the code section. In general, you have ability to, if you have the ability to grant a permit, it kind of stands to reason that you may have the perhaps lesser ability to grant it on a conditional basis. And I think we have done that before in some other contexts. And so I think it would need to be clear, in the motion that that was how it was conditioned. But I certainly don't see anything in the code provision that would prohibit you from doing it.
And I only say that taking into consideration the traffic study that we had and the specifics of the pedicabs, having trouble on the hills and impeding traffic because of the speed they were able to travel. I think that's why we kind of weeded them out from the golf carts, because the golf carts were able to go with the flow of traffic, given the fact that the flow of traffic downtown is not normally what it is on a regular street. So, and that is the only reason, is I don't want to revisit the same problem we were having with them to begin with.
Well, I think that all of the permittees would have to understand that their operation of these permitted vehicles would be limited to the restrictions that the commission has previously adopted in terms of operation during rush hour, or lack of operation during rush hour, rather.
So is Ms. Lovett. Could you come forward a second, please? Go ahead, Ms.
I was going to
Fields.
say the rush hour, 7 to 9 and 4 to 6.
If we were to issue a certificate for you today, would you be agreeable to a condition that you would have electric assist, I think you called it pedal assist, electric pedal assist on all of the vehicles?
Absolutely. Indeed.
We mostly did before.
It's ideal,
Yeah,
actually.
We've Chelsea and I worked together for years and set them up personally, mechanical-wise. It's what we've used for the past 3 years.
It's an industry, yeah, I mean, it's an industry that develops.
A yes is fine with me.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, please.
We're running up on the 4 o'clock hour, and I've got to get everybody out of here by 5, so yes is good.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. You have a motion?
Why,
Oh,
just
go
one
ahead.
question.
Yeah.
Why can one company operate with 1, but the other company needs 12 in order to operate?
Well, I'm just broke and I can only afford to apply for one unit, and I just was trying to operate. I didn't know that these guys were even applying, and because everyone was like, it's a lost cause, don't try. But I spoke with Billy, and he said, if you can.
I did not say it was a lost cause.
No, I was saying, no, you're the reason why I applied, because you said, we talked about the dry cleaner business and everything. I annoyed Billy a couple times, and I showed him the design of my pedicab, and I was really just trying to establish a company that I can just have my own bike that I can go out and do my rides and make my living and not bother anybody or propose a problem to traffic, and figured I might have a chance. And I fully support their operation, and we can even talk about combining things, but Bart and I were just kind of having a vision for one 5-seater and trying that for a year, and we could maybe have 2 companies here with more than, one bike, but.
12.
I like 20.
Well,
I think big, go big or go home.
And the only reason I considered 12 is, one downtown, if it actually does have a need, 1 would not meet it. 20 would be too much, but if she's the only one with one pedicab, then are we meeting any kind of public necessity with 1? Versus if he can add another 12 to the mix, if it's truly an act of public necessity, that would definitely need to be more than 1. 20, yes, I think would be too many.
I do a lot of free ride campaigns in front of convention centers. I work with Google, Microsoft, Budweiser, Miller Coors, Salesforce, Honda, Waste Management, Indianapolis Motor Speedway, Lyft, T-Mobile, AT&T, Cricket. I can go on and on and on.
Why do you need 12, though? To make
I want 20.
Yeah, but why do you need 12?
Future-proof. I work with large fleets.
Yeah.
So the more I'm like McDonald's. The more I put out there, the more the bikes get seen, the more people see it. So when people come out of the hotel, they see a pedicab, and maybe I'll take one later.
I think we're trying to find out, is it
one
financially
as well?
Financially, I have the bikes.
No, is it? Can you operate financially and stay in business, not just pop up and pop out, with less than 12, or is 12 the number that you need to financially stay feasible here in the community?
12 is like minimum in all my crunching numbers and everything else. 20 is like what I like. but 12 is like minimum. I just don't want to come back for meetings and have to beg for permits and everything else. That makes sense.
Say, the reason why we're applying for 12 too is what I said before with Nashville pedicab closing down. We personally know many who were out of job last year and can fill and give back that opportunity to those 12s. Also, like you said, having just one in the city doesn't provide a necessity for the city. 12, people see it more often and want to take those rides and know that it's a option for them in the middle of the night or to call different people. You can't have one person working the whole city to be accessible to every tourist.
I'll say too, in my opinion, and I fully respect the investment that Travis has made, and I believe that he can probably operate this company a lot better than the former companies that were here in terms of advertisement and whatnot that can keep the company running. That's really important. But
our concern is, though, the congestion of putting 12 pedal vehicles on the street.
In my opinion, from my experience of working downtown and as an individual, just to play devil's advocate here, because I think it's better to have 12 and 1 than none. I think that that's a fair number, and it also allows the individual riders the ability to make the money. If it's convoluted, there's too many pedicabbers. No one's able to make a living that way, and I do think that there's a potential of congestion. That I think that meeting in the middle with the numbers there is a fair, safe bet. If the decision has to be made for all or nothing,
There's a man in the room that owns 15 pedicabs in New Orleans. There's 45 pedicabs in New Orleans with smaller streets, and they work in New Orleans left and right, like causing no congestion and everything else. I have 12. I have 12, and
I'm sorry, but Broadway and Bourbon.
When you have 12 pedicabs on the street in Nashville, personally as a driver, I don't want to be in the same place as 5 other pedicabbers because I'm trying to get my business right. So 12 pedicabs spread out throughout the city is not going to cause congestion at all if they're spread out, especially because downtown Nashville is like a box mainly. And so when you're spread out around this box, it won't cause any congestion.
You do realize you're not the only person so in our brain, you're not the only person in the box, though. Yes, there's the tractor, there's the pedal taverns, absolutely. There's the scooters, there's you, there's the horse carriages. So,
and there's a person trying to get home.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a person trying to get home, and there's an Uber guy somewhere around you. And so you in that box, there are a lot of things to consider in that, you pick up a handful of sand on the beach, it's not much, but you dump a truckload, it becomes a lot. So is there a number under 12 that you could do it?
I just like 12. I run 12 in Indianapolis. It's a good number. 10 possibly. Like, Indianapolis is just such a small city compared to this, like tourist-wise. Just like
I'm trying to help you here.
I got you. Let's just go with 10. Let's just go with 10.
Can I ask you a question? How many did the past company, the one that didn't succeed, how many do they have?
18.
18.
20.
Yeah, it was. I was going to say I think he had permits for like 30, but never got to that number. Seems like.
Yeah,
I could be wrong.
It was a monopoly on the permit situation.
I'm just asking the question. I feel like we probably need to have a test. I can appreciate your not wanting to come back and beg for additional permits, which I
was up here talking to people on their cell phones up here, so.
Unfortunately, we have to work off cell phones nowadays.
I was going to say, again, not helping yourself.
I gotcha.
I'm thinking maybe, I don't know, I'm thinking maybe a max of 10. maybe like 9 and 1 and see how that goes. I don't know. I'm just verbalizing.
I need to ask Ms. Lovett. One thing, there is a prohibition on the length of the pedicabs. What's the length? It's no more than 10 feet.
No, definitely not.
I think you said 105 inches.
110 inches usually, something like that.
Well, hers was just a longer one. Hers was a larger one. I just wanted to make sure, because I didn't want to approve something and then turn around and go, wait a minute, there's a prohibition. There's an existing prohibition. If a pedicab, it shall not have a width of more than 50 inches and a length of no more than 10 feet.
105 inches is what it says here.
We're good.
105 long, 51 wide.
It fits in the back of my van, so.
51 wide.
So
The limit is 50.
Yeah.
51 inches wide.
It's got to be 50 inches and no more than 10 feet.
Yeah, I'm totally sorry. And that's
Is that factory measurement 51 inches? Because it would not, I'm not trying to split hairs, but it just wouldn't qualify. We have the same issue with taxi cabs and their base.
the factory measurement?
Is that the wheelbase we're measuring at 51 wide?
Yes. End of the
I have 105 inches long, 51 inches wide, 55 inches tall.
And the regulation says no more than 50 inches wide.
Well, it does have, I mean, this is what the guy that I bought it from, haven't actually measured it myself, but I've got it in my van and I measured, it was 48 in my van and it fit, so.
Is that regulation on wheelbase or?
It doesn't say.
The wheels are larger, a bit larger tires, but that can be changed easily, the tire wheelbase.
If I were going to measure and you say, Billy, you make a decision, I'd measure the body is what I would be. That's what my mind is thinking, not measuring rim to rim. By the same token, I don't know if that's just what it sounds right.
It doesn't state, it's up to you to decide.
Yes.
Oh.
It's up to you.
It goes back to me. Thank you all. You're not the only one in this government that delegates to me.
All right, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, we've had a lot of discussion, a lot of back and forth, numbers. Is there a motion?
I'm going to rescind my motion to allow the other commissioner to submit one.
So you're striking your motion?
Yes.
There has not been a second, so I assume we can strike the motion. Okay. Is there a motion on the floor?
Not presently.
Well, personally, I thought the other motion was okay. I was going to vote for it.
Oh, well, you see, I'm trying to.
Y'all have had the experience with this before, so that's why I've done.
Well, our experience with it before was not with motor assist, and it was. My only consideration was when they told me they could actually provide a motor on these bikes to because I've actually been on the bike with my brother, and I'm 230 and he's 235, and the guy gave up on us on the hill. He was like, "I'm sorry, man, I'm not going to charge you anything, but I can't." He did. He told us, "I'm not going to charge you anything. I just can't, dude. I can't get up there."
I've had that feeling on a bicycle before, yeah.
The motor assist actually, it was, and also knowing that I've been a biker for years. Used to do the Mountain Man, the Mountain Man 100. I don't know if it's still around, if they still do it, but and I know, your legs get burnt out, they get tired. That's it. You're human. We don't have a Duracell in us like the bunny. We can change. And that power assist, if this is truly going to be an experiment in public necessity, we need to err on the side of what we already know previously as a problem, and that was a problem. I particularly did not have a problem with the 12, but to initiate the experiment, it's going to take more than me.
I'll tell you what, can I propose a motion before I make the motion? I'm going to make the same motion for 12, okay? And obviously, you can amend my motion. Is that?
Plus 1 or
12,
All
period, yes.
Yeah,
Well,
she's
wait a
getting
minute.
one.
Oh, no, one.
Still with one company?
Yes, no, are we doing both companies?
You can do it together or
both.
separate.
I was told.
Okay, I would propose 1 for the one lady and 12 for the other company. Fully aware that you may amend my motion, but at least we got a motion to work with. Is that okay?
With the provision that they have
Yeah, electric assist.
electric assist, okay.
I can testify it makes a big difference.
Well, I would, having that being put up, is that, are you?
You should second my motion, and then we can discuss whether to amend my motion.
Hold on. Are you making a motion?
Yes, absolutely, I'm sorry.
Now,
yes.
state it very clearly, please.
Okay. I move that we accept the application for 1.
For rock and roll rides?
Yes, I'm sorry, I should use, yeah, which one is which? Right, I've got it here. And for 12 for Nashville Bike Cab. With electric assist.
All right.
With a, I'm sorry?
All pedicabs.
All pedicabs, yes. Help me out here, I'm sorry. Okay.
Is there a second?
I second that motion.
All right. Any discussion before we take a vote? I'm going to pause the discussion. Ms. Lovett, you have your hand up. Is there something?
I'm really sorry, but this gentleman here, just something I could make before you guys.
Come up, please.
Sorry. He looks important, but like he knows what he's talking about. But I feel like this might be relevant, and hopefully we're moving in the right direction. But in the case that my pedicab didn't meet requirements, and you guys felt that you wanted that the inches or whatnot was not right, he said that I could move to apply for additional permits under my company, but I guess for one extra if I had a different bike. But
Right now, your application is for one
Yes.
permit,
That's all
one
you had.
certificate of necessity of need, and one permit, and you'll have to deal with whether your bike meets the compliance or not with it.
And if that bike didn't, you could certainly have another bike. You could trade some.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
In other words, we're not permitting that bike. We are permitting a bike that's compliant.
As long as it has electric assist, based on the motion so far. Okay, thank you.
Works for me.
All right, there's a motion on the table, and it's been seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
I'm going to say aye.
Which way?
Opposed.
Opposed, okay. The motion carries. All right. The public hearings are now closed, and Mr. Fields, we're moving on to the record towing services record applications.
Laterrell Edwards. Mr. Edwards, are you present? Laterrell Demond Edwards.
What was the reason it was on our agenda today?
He had a 2017 charge of a domestic charge that he did not reveal.
All right. Is this the first time it's been sent?
Yes, sir.
And do I hear a motion to consider resetting it for the next meeting?
Was he ever here and he left,
No.
or?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, you can.
If we deny this, he has to reapply altogether, correct?
Correct.
I make a motion to deny.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Doesn't want him if you don't show up.
Did I hear any votes down here? Did you vote? Did you? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay. Any opposed?
You're denying, I want to make it clear, rather than deferring. Correct? Is that the choices, to defer or to deny?
Your option is, I guess, so you could deny it, you can defer it,
Take no action.
or take no action.
It's my understanding he's not here?
He's not present. And historically, over the many years, the commission has done both.
All right, we've already taken a vote and had 2 yay votes to the denial. Are there any opposed?
I'll say no.
Okay.
Sorry.
Motion passes. Stanley Green.
Stanley Green?
Yes.
In making his application, Mr. Green revealed quite a lot. And because he revealed quite a lot, I suggested that he need to visit with the commission. He also has his potential employer, Andres Towing, with him. There is, as best I can tell, and again, it is lengthy, but in our review, we don't find anything that would prohibit him from being a driver, record driver. It just, his most recent charge was 2016 charge failure to appear. Before that, it was 2013, and it was a false report. There was an assault at that point. Then before that was 2000. Before that, so again, most of his issues were a while back.
Traditionally, when a person has a lengthy criminal record, Mr. Fields will bring them before us if we have any questions of them before we make take a vote on the application.
Yes.
You're not on probation or in any way right now, are you?
No, sir.
Okay, parole?
No, sir.
What was the reason for the failure to appear?
He said it was 2013.
2016.
I forgot to go to court.
I think the question is, what were you going to court for?
For somebody said I did something what I didn't do.
Well, what did they say you did?
Say I choked him.
Oh.
Yeah.
That would be the 2013 charge, correct? Does that make better sense? Had an aggravated assault?
Yes.
In October of 2013.
Yes.
And then it finally rolled around to the, oh, now I'm starting to sound like Mr. McNally. I'm sorry. Excuse me, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Fields, you're really learning how to read these criminal backgrounds, aren't you?
Good teacher.
Mr. Green, you had the aggravated assault in 2013, and then you had to go to court in 2016, but you didn't go.
Yes.
What was your court appearance for in 2016?
It was for the 2013 charge.
Yes, but was it for trial? Was it for a plea? Was it for a probation violation? What?
It was for a plea.
Plea. Okay. And did you go in and what was the outcome of the case?
2016. I'm thinking it got dismissed because she didn't show up, or something like I pleaded no contempt.
Okay. And who was the person that made the complaint against you, of alleging you strangled them?
It was an ex-girlfriend.
All right. And was that in General Sessions Court?
Yes, sir.
All right. It does indicate that your charges were dismissed, cost to the defendant, and you were charged with a misdemeanor assault, domestic bodily injury.
Yes.
Actually, initially it started out as an ag assault.
Yes.
And you're up in Division II criminal court, or no, you were in front of Judge Blackshear?
Yes.
Okay. Well, the criminal justice background sheets indicates that the disposition was dismissed, cost to the defendant. It does not explain why it was dismissed. And we are talking about the charge where Mr. Ridings was your lawyer?
Yes.
Okay. Why do you want to hire him? Okay. And introduce yourself, please.
My name's Andre Rivers, owner of Andre's Towing. But he's been working with me for about 5-6 months. He's just been taking care of the yard, moving vehicles around. Most of our stuff is repossessions. He'll clean the car out, take inventory of people's stuff. So I mean, he's been around me for a long time.
Well, repossessions often result in people getting very upset and tempers flying. Given the history of an ag assault with an ex-girlfriend and some of these other things on his record, are you concerned?
He wouldn't be doing repossessions. He'll just be doing motor club stuff.
Doing what?
Motor club.
Okay.
Just
AAA, things of that
Yes,
nature?
sir.
Okay. Yes, sir.
That was in my past. You know, I didn't came a long way. You know what I mean? I was pretty much young and dumb back when I wasn't thinking. Put it like that.
Well, that's what's important to this commission, is to understand why you are smarter and wiser and older now than you were back then. What changed?
I grew up.
In 6 years?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. I understand responsibility. I got to take care of my family. And I'm tired of the foolishness.
What kind of family you have?
Excuse me?
What kind of family?
I'm married with grandkids. All my kids are grown.
Mm-hmm.
But I have grandkids.
Any other questions?
Nothing on this application disqualifies him, Mr. Fields.
Do I have a motion?
I have a question or two, if you don't mind. I'm sorry. Mr. Green? Mr. Green?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Green, I'm just looking at your handwritten application right now. I'm having trouble working my way through the typewritten version. So you're listing here that you were charged with homicide in April of 2000, felony murder in December of 2000. So those are two separate.
It all got broke down.
What
My
does that mean?
initial charge at the end was voluntary manslaughter.
But in the indictment, you were charged with murder in first degree and the alternative theory of felony murder?
Yeah, it kept on going. Yes, sir.
So, but you have different dates. So you have that you were charged with homicide in April of 2000, and then you have it that you were again charged with felony murder in December of 2000.
I was trying to get the dates right.
Okay, so
Yeah.
there weren't two.
No, ma'am. No, ma'am.
Okay.
Because it says be thorough, and I was trying to get the dates and everything
Okay,
accurate.
but one charge for
Yes,
in
ma'am.
connection with the death of another person.
Yes, ma'am.
And tell me about that.
Like I said, it was in 2000. I was a kid.
Who died and what happened?
It was drug related.
All right, that doesn't tell us exactly what is being asked. What was the nature of the offense?
The nature of the offense?
Were you stealing the guy's drugs and shot and killed him? Was he stealing your drugs and you shot and killed him? Or was it a drug deal?
It was a drug deal gone bad.
Okay. Were you selling?
Yes.
And what were you selling? What kind of drugs?
Cocaine, sir.
All right. And the person, were you selling it to this other individual?
Yes, sir. He tried to take my drugs.
All right, without paying for them?
Yes.
And you shot him?
Yes.
Where did this occur?
In like in 2000.
No, where? I'm sorry, where?
Oh, in Madison.
Okay. Anybody else involved? Well, that's not a fair question. Did you end up pleading guilty?
Yes, sir.
All right, to voluntary manslaughter?
Yes.
What was your sentence?
15-year sentence.
Did you go to serve it?
Yes.
All right, and that was in what year did you get convicted?
I got convicted in 2000. I didn't get out. I got convicted in 2000. I didn't get released until 2009.
And then you were on parole?
Then I was on parole in 2010, 11. I got off parole in 2011.
So that would be at least 8 years ago, which is okay.
Would make him, allow him to be qualified.
Yeah, we... Thank you for your candor on that.
I forgot your name, sir.
Andre.
Andre, tell me again what he'll actually be doing. So right now he's working in the yard, you said? And what is he actually going to be doing if we approve this?
Motor club services. Say you have a flat tire, you need fuel delivered to you, you're locked out of your car, that type of deal.
And is that more money? That's a promotion, obviously?
Yeah, than what he's at now, yes.
If my car broke down when I called through AAA, he might be someone who would come and pick it up and tow it to the repair shop or wherever.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Mr. Field, do we have the ability to even know or limit to him just to motor club service and no repos?
Again, conditionally, you can approve his permit to do specific things assigned to this company, knowing, as we advised the owner of this company, that if he were to fail to live up to the standards, that would be a violation of the ordinance. In other words, he failed to do what you've asked him to do. So we would bring him back in front of the commission for consideration of whether he should be allowed to continue to operate one non-consent to general record company.
We've done that before.
We have restricted for his company before.
I think it was on a 6-month.
Andre's Towing works very closely with the commission office.
So you go back in 6 months?
If you would like to see him again in 6 months or 3 months or whatever, we would just put it on the agenda for 6 months from now. You could come in and visit with him. We could we could require a background check, and just.
I will say one thing I really appreciate with the towing companies, and yours in particular, is that they give people who have lengthy criminal records a second chance to have gainful employment and take care of their families. It's one of the areas where people can actually get employment after they come out of prison.
The commission has had a long history of working with the companies for that very reason. It is a challenge for people to reenter society and to find gainful employment. This is an entry into a career, and sometimes people will think that a record driver is not a career. Well, I've known a record driver, been driving a record for 25, 30 years, and that's their career, and they're good at it, and they like it, and with any kind of luck, if you choose to approve it, he'll be like many others.
I grew up with Cottons. He's no longer in business, but Cottons was around for forever.
And I like the idea that we could put a restriction on the granting of the permit, and where you would not be in a situation that might become confrontational.
You do understand the commission's concern with placing that restriction on the no repos, doing that, like the commissioner said, that repos can get pretty confrontational. And I know you said you've grown up, but we all, guys who generally get angry will generally always get angry.
Can I say one more thing?
Sure.
He will not be doing any repos because that's a totally separate license that you have to have to be trained to do that. That's.
There may be additional state licensing
business,
for that.
yeah,
It's beyond.
and he wouldn't qualify for that.
Well, I make the motion unless anybody else has questions. Sure.
Two more. This indecent exposure, what can you tell me what that was about?
I was in the park with a girlfriend, and I was in my truck, and the officer walked up and hit the. Okay.
Okay, I got you. And Andre, do you have a policy when you have someone going out to, like, let's say a lady by the side of the road, or a guy by the side of the road, anybody who ran out of gas? What's the protocol, for example, if the person's stuck and he's going to tow the car? what happens to the person? Does the person ride with him?
Yes.
Okay.
And we have cameras with audio in the trucks. So they see in front of the truck, in the cab, and audio in the cab.
Well, that's very good.
Actually, me and Bill Fields talked about that.
I like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a long sentence on a manslaughter. All right, do I have a motion?
I would like to make a motion to approve with, I know you said that it takes a license, but with the restriction that he not be allowed to do repos. Oh, yes. And I would like to limit him to Andres for at least a period of 1 year.
Is there a second?
Second.
Well, I don't want to be out of the rules of order, but can we consider having him come back here within a period of time before? Do you want that to be?
Motion. As it is, it's like be back in 6 months or 3 months or whatever.
Friendly amendment to the motion? Unless you.
No, you go ahead.
I never heard of a friendly amendment, but apparently this is a friendly
I'm
amendment.
making it up. Like, if you would be willing to accept her amendment to your motion.
I am willing to accept her amendment to my motion.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor.
When he would
6 months.
All right, so it's very clear on the motion. We have a motion on.
President,
Huh?
would you like me present about that?
A motion on the floor to approve Mr. Stanley Antonio Green with the condition that he not be engaged in repo towing and report back to the commission, did we say 6 months?
6 months.
In 6 months. And limited to Andres Towing Company for 1 year. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Good luck.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Mr. Green. Mr. Peregrine.
Robert William Peregrine. Mr. Peregrine.
Is there a motion?
How many times has Mr. Peregrine?
This is first.
Oh, this is his first
time.
I'd like to make a motion to defer.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Also,
Aye.
was Edwards also?
The reason why I denied that.
I'm sorry?
Was Edwards also first time?
Uh-huh.
Ms. Palmer, there's a motion that voted on 2 ayes to defer Mr. Peregrine until the next meeting.
I'm sorry, I was trying to figure out what, Mr. Edwards, it was his first time as well, I believe, so I was.
No, I believe it was his second time.
No, it was this one.
Okay, let's get through the Mr. Peregrine motion first, and then we can revisit Mr. Edwards if we want to, okay?
Sorry.
On Mr. Peregrine.
The motion was to defer?
Yes, we have 2 votes in favor, and,
Okay, aye.
all right, motion passes. There may be some reconsideration on Mr. Edwards' application.
If you want to reconsider that.
Okay. Is there a motion to reconsider Mr. Edwards?
Just with some clarification.
Okay. But first, we got to have a motion whether we're going to reconsider.
I'll move to reconsider.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. All right, it's open now for reconsideration, Mr. Edwards' application.
I apologize if I erred in what I heard. I had considered that Mr. Edwards had been before us before, and my motion was if he didn't, I thought this was his second time, that if this had been his second time and he did not appear, he needed to reapply as he did not show an interest in getting the permit.
Do you have a new motion?
I make a motion to defer Mr. Edwards to the next meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. James Shaver.
Thanks for bringing that to my attention.
No, somebody brought it up. I don't know how it came up.
Mr. Shaver.
Hey, how y'all doing?
Hi. Look who's back again.
Mr. Shaver made an application to be a record driver, also to work for Andres Towing. In making his application, he failed to disclose a 2012 aggravated assault.
Well, Mr. Shaver, why did you not disclose your 2012 aggravated assault?
Yes, sir. It slipped my mind because it was dismissed and expunged, and I was going off the Howard Gentry record that's online.
Oh, you're going to the criminal court
Yes,
clerk,
sir.
Mr.
Yes.
Gentry's website, and you ran your record there, and of
Yes,
course
sir.
it would not show up since it was expunged.
Yes, sir.
Well, having a serious case dismissed and expunged is usually something the person remembers because it doesn't happen very often.
Yes, sir.
Did you not remember it, or you just didn't think you needed to report it because it was expunged?
I didn't remember it, and at the same time, I didn't think to record it, write it down.
Nothing disqualifies him, Mr.
No, the charge, I think, ended up being, was no longer a felony, went down to a misdemeanor. So there's no disqualifiers.
Well, then I'm confused. Mr. Shaver says it was dismissed and expunged, and you're indicating, Mr. Fields, you're indicating it was actually reduced to a lesser charge. It looks like maybe a misdemeanor. Yeah.
Are you looking at what
I'm looking at the same thing you're looking at.
TBI record indicates that on...
Is it 40, 35, 313 or something?
Doesn't look like it so far.
Mm-hmm.
It's still showing up on the TBI record, too.
Indicates it was in 2012. You remember being, it would be about 11 years ago on August the 14th? What they're showing is that you had an original charge of aggravated assault. It was I'm assuming pled down to an assault with domestic fear of bodily injury. You remember any of that?
No, sir. Only one I remember is when they printed out to me at the record permit place.
Oh, well, again, that's what this is.
Yeah, yes, sir.
But that's the one you said that.
Yeah, when I looked
they
it up.
They dismissed it?
Yeah, it ain't showing on my record or anything.
Mr. Fields, which one you look? Okay, let me ask you a couple questions, Shaver.
Yes, sir.
This is indicating an arrest date of August 8th, 2012 on the charge of aggravated assault / strangulation. And then I have another document here that says guilty on August 14th, 2012 to an assault, domestic, fear of bodily injury, misdemeanor, 11 months, 29 days probation. Even says that the costs were all paid. So, in the I've got a General Sessions Court number of GS 593848. So my question is, did you have two different cases in August of 2012?
No, sir. It's all the same one.
So when you got arrested on the aggravated assault, were you in jail?
Yes, sir.
Did you stay in jail?
No, I had got out.
You made bail?
No, I did make bond. No, sir.
You did not make bond?
No, sir.
All right, so you stayed in jail?
Yeah, for about like a few days.
Yeah, okay. Well, I thought I asked you if you stayed in jail, and you said you made bond.
I thought you was talking about a good period of time in jail.
No, well, it looks to me like 6 days later you came up on the jail docket and entered a guilty plea to a misdemeanor assault and got 11 months, 29 days probation. Does that ring a bell with you?
Yes, sir.
What bell does it ring?
The probation bell.
Yeah. So your aggravated assault wasn't dismissed and expunged, was it?
I got it expunged, yes, sir.
Then how's it showing up on this record?
Well, I thought it was expunged, but I know it's dismissed.
Why do you have a guilty plea to assault 6 days later?
I'm just when I looked it up, I didn't see it on my record. On the Gentry.com.
Well, all this goes to your veracity with us here today about why you didn't put it down in your application.
You're telling us that you didn't put it down, you didn't put the aggravated assault down in your application because...
I wasn't purposely trying to hide anything.
Hold on.
Yes, sir.
You're telling us you didn't put the aggravated assault down because it was dismissed and expunged. But what I'm looking at, it suggests to me that it was not dismissed and expunged, that you pled out 6 days later to the lesser charge of misdemeanor assault, which means you wouldn't be able to get it dismissed and expunged.
I know I had to go down there to apply for an apartment, and I had to go get expungement paper, and I got that piece of paper, but I didn't bring it with me today. So I'm confused with you.
Oh. Yeah, misdemeanor convictions are expungible, but this is still showing up on the record and doesn't show 40, 35, 313. So, where?
When did you go get that expungement?
Probably probation.
Was this recently or
This
back
was
in
like in 2014, 2015.
Oh, so it's had time to.
Mr. Andre, while we ponder this, what is he doing for you? How long has he been working for you?
Let's see, you just, about 3 weeks.
Doing what?
It's the same thing, he was on the yard.
Not cleaning.
Where did you work before this?
I'm sorry.
Plenty temp service jobs, Derby, CalArc, Carlex, all kind of them. Yes, ma'am.
And he'll be doing the same thing that the other gentleman was doing?
Yes, ma'am.
Why is it that the other gentleman had to wait 6 months, work for you for 6 months, but he's only been working for you for 3 weeks, and you're willing to give him this promotion?
He's more closer to my business partner, Teresa.
I'm sorry?
He's been working with Teresa a lot, my business partner. She was here, but she had to leave.
Okay, so he's been working for your company longer than 3 weeks. Is that?
No, he's only been 3 weeks, but he's been doing
Other work with Miss Teresa Morgan.
if that makes sense.
Is she at a different company? Yeah, I'm confused.
No, she's my business partner of Andre's Towing, but she's an attorney.
Okay. Teresa Morgan, I see her.
I think what he's saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that he's been working with Teresa longer than 3 weeks, but only for your company for 3 weeks.
Yes.
It could be very well one of those issues of records that we're getting incomplete records. I just looked at the website, and it's not showing on the website, on Mr. Gentry's website. When I typed in his name and his birthday, I did not go through the case record.
I'm afraid to pull my cell phone out now after the last accusations. Really?
Oh, yeah.
No, the one thing you can do.
Use mine.
Have you guys?
I've got it.
Let them know.
Because you can put in the actual case number.
Okay.
And
That's where I've just now learned. Once more, I've learned.
GS. Well, I do find it. When you run your case number, GS 593848, defendant James Shaver, date of birth March 23, 1991. That you?
Yes, yes, sir.
Let's see what it says. Case is closed. Charged with aggravated assault initially. Convicted of assault, domestic fear, bodily injury. Your guilty plea went down on August 14, 2012. Was your lawyer Georgia Sims?
I can't remember that. Because I was appointed a public defender.
Okay. You can pass it back to Mr. Fields. I think that answers what happened on your charge of aggravated assault from August 8, 2012, with the disposition on August 14, 2012.
Yes, sir.
So he's still qualified, though,
He'd
isn't
be
he?
qualified, and again, if you have conditions, you can certainly do that.
Could I ask another question? You were put on probation?
Yes, sir.
Okay, did you have any probation violations?
No, sir. I only did like 6 months of probation.
Okay.
It wasn't the whole 1129.
Right.
Do you do drug testing?
The state makes us do them.
Okay. How often?
They're random.
Okay, so you'll just randomly test people?
I don't. Highway Patrol does.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Those are the ones doing the repossession?
No.
Just,
Our trucks go across state line.
so you've got the, okay, yeah. Would he be subject to that? And you'd report to us, as you would any other driver that you have that's licensed with us, you'd report that? And return his permit to us. Thank you.
And what were you doing for Teresa?
Just different kind of work, yard work and other kind of work.
And how long did you work for her? Before?
I only been working for her about like 2 months, 2 to 3 months.
Okay.
So you worked for her 2 or 3 months now, Andre, for the last month?
Yes, sir. That's the best estimation right there.
For,
The temporary.
and you're still doing the cleaning and, okay.
He will be.
And I'm working for Cinemax right now.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
He will be like a part-time driver, nobody full-time.
Other questions?
Is there a motion?
Can I ask another question? Exactly what was our motion with the last guy in terms of the time?
6 months.
6 months.
Moves to approve, not allowed to perform any repossession, restrict to Andre for 1 year, and had to reappear in 6 months, or it'd be at the February meeting and reappear to visit with the commission.
I would just say it sounds that would be appropriate for this case. Does that make sense? Okay. I'll make that same motion for this gentleman. I'm not good at restating motions.
So your motion would be to approve his application, not be allowed to provide repossession services, restrict to Andre for 1 year, and be required to appear before the commission in 6 months.
Yes, I'll make that motion.
I'd like to add one other thing to that, just because of, I know just because of the short period of time you've actually been involved with him, is that if during that time any random drug screen come back positive, that Billy be notified immediately, and upon that being negative, that it be revoked. Would that automatically happen anyway?
I think I've got the authority to, if for reason I can take it and bring it back in front of you. I can't revoke it, but I think I can
Pull it.
tell him not to, I can make him stop driving
and then bring him back for review at commission.
Right, it's just I mean, you haven't known him that long. Nothing against
No, I
him.
understand.
All right, for the record, is the motion clear? And the amendment? Okay. Is there a second?
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you for your time up here.
Thank you. Have a good one.
You too. Good luck. Okay, Mr. Fields, we're on to booting. Review booting employee application from Samuel Owen. Samuel Owen?
Yes, sir.
Coming up. Mr. Owen?
I'm Samuel Owen, yes, sir.
Okay. What's up, Mr. Fields?
In making his application, as you requested in the past, he failed to disclose a 2012 expiration of registration. He did have some charges that are on his record. He did disclose them.
What was the charge? It wasn't disclosed.
It's registration.
Okay, of a vehicle.
Yeah, anytime you're dealing with vehicles, if it's a cab driver is one thing, but when you're dealing with booting and/or records, registration issues, licensing issues, tag issues, and things are a little more concerning.
From 6 years ago. Okay. No, I'm not second guessing. I just want to make sure.
Is this right, 2019? Unlawful weapon?
That is. Now, I did put that on my application.
Yeah, I see.
It was in Rutherford County. I got pulled over because I flipped a cigarette out the window. I had a pair of brass knuckles in my console of my truck. My girlfriend's son had bought them for me at a flea market. I forgot they were in there, never used them. I played cards. They had a spade, a diamond, a heart, and a club on them. He bought them for me, and like I said, I forgot I had them. And the registration
You think
thing.
there'd be a less offensive way of describing that? You know, well, we see weapon and we're thinking a gun.
Oh, I understand. That's why that's what I was charged with.
You know?
I'm trying to be completely honest. You know what I mean?
I didn't even know brass knuckles were
illegal. I didn't either.
Yeah.
They are. Been for a long time.
It's a historic artifact.
They changed the law on a blade. You know, it used to only be able to be this long, and now it don't matter. But you know, I mean, you can walk down the street with a sword, but I had brass knuckles in the truck.
And just so you know, he did leave out fishing without a license, but I did not bring that back to you.
Well, he's also left out insurance. He failed to have his insurance with him too. So.
Yeah, I just.
Who's with you today?
Joshua Nelson. I'm the regional manager for Nashville Booting.
For who?
Nashville Booting.
Okay. Anybody got any more questions? Are we ready for a motion?
I'll let her finish this.
Okay.
Yeah, just quickly, you wrote 2013, you were charged with aggravated assault. Your actual...
It was actually 2015. I got the papers.
That was my
on it.
question. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So it's not two, it's one.
It's just one. Yes, ma'am. And that was either suspended or retired. Retired for 2 months. I stayed out of trouble. I was under the impression, from what the judge told me, that it went away from that. I still put it on my paperwork, but I went back down to the courthouse 2 weeks ago. They're expunging it now.
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yep. All right, we're on to other passenger vehicles for hire. Review the OPVH driver application of James Bodie, Jr.
James Bodie, Jr.
What's going on?
In making his application, Mr. Bodie failed to list some charges. All of them were older charges. Shoplifting in 72, possession of controlled substance 77, possession of burglar tools in 78, 82, burglary of an automobile. And again, those were old.
Tickets.
Mm-hmm. How you doing today, Mr. Bodie?
I'm doing fine, sir.
All right, got an explanation for failure to disclose these old charges?
Well, actually, I'll be honest with you.
Well, we prefer that.
Yeah, it was like 30 or 40 years ago, and I just couldn't remember all those dates and times and stuff. So I just failed to put them down there. But forgive me for that, but I have changed quite a bit since '72.
I would hope.
Oh, yeah. I just recently retired from the federal government. 37 years of service.
For what?
For the federal government.
What'd you do there?
I worked at the VA Medical Center here in Nashville, and I was the head cook. And I worked 37 years there. And I just retired 8 months ago.
Where were you at the federal government? Where? Which facility?
The VA Medical Center in Nashville. And since then, I have became a deacon of my church. And I volunteer for Second Harvest Food Bank, and several more things I do in church, helping out people.
Before we consider your application, if you've just retired after 37 years of service and you're a deacon and you're doing volunteer work, why do you want to go back to work to drive a vehicle?
To drive?
Yeah.
Well, being retired, I just wanted another job to keep me busy, because it gets boring.
Are you trying to get out of the house?
Well, that too, because she keeps me busy. But yeah, so I'd rather be.
Realize this will be on television.
I hope not. But I'd rather work for the transportation company I'm trying to work for. But I really would appreciate if y'all recommend me, consider me. I did some real silly things way back then. Some of the people might not even been born then, but back in '72. I
think we all were.
Anybody want to hold?
I know I was.
I was born in '69, so I was
69. So I've come a long way, sir. I have. Long way.
Had he disclosed, he would have been. We would have already approved.
Is there any other questions? Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Thank all of you.
Okay.
Thanks for serving.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
Mr. Fields, we're on to review company applications.
All the company, you have three companies. Kenneth Easter doing business as Domino. I never can pronounce things. Diamo, that's it. Mad Dog Transportation, Determined Destination and Transit. All of them in order.
Is there a motion?
Motion to approve all of them.
Second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye, please.
Aye.
Motion passes. Now we're up to the review the complaint disciplinary issues, and this deals with Nashville Pedicab doing business as Nashville Bar Bike, and I believe that they are represented by counsel. And
yes,
if before,
Mr. Vice Chair.
Okay, and before you start, if Ms. Costanza, did you have something you wanted to enlighten the commission about?
Sure. Mr. Haynes and I have spoken in the interim, and Mr. Fields as well. And he had proposed on behalf of his client kind of a proposed resolution. And you'll remember the details of the complaint from I believe it was the July 25th meeting. So we're not here to rehash all of that, but you all had kind of left the disposition for the following meeting. And maybe with some encouragement that we speak and try to resolve it amicably. And the proposed resolution, and Mr. Haynes, correct me if I'm stating this incorrectly, but I believe is that they have a certificate for 2 pedal carriages, and that the permit for one of the 2 pedal carriages would be suspended for a period of 8 to 10 months. And they would accept that, and we would agree to have that be the resolution of this matter.
And also, I would add, Mr. Vice Chair, Commissioners, that since the meeting in July, as a sign of good faith, pending our discussions, we have sidelined one of our permitted carriages, so we've only run one. as a sign of good faith. And we made this proposal for a few reasons. We want to resolve the pending issues before the commission, of course. We want to try to foster a good working relationship with the commission moving forward, and we want to accommodate other licensees as they acclimate to our competition, the change of business model for Nashville Pedicab, now known as Nashville Bar Bike.
Any thoughts, Mr. Fields? And is this a recommendation?
What I want to say, because I'm very straightforward in the last meeting, and everybody know, I think, I'm not sure there was an intentional misrepresentation, but I want to encourage this company and any other company that we regulate, if there's a problem, and if you deviate from what this commission says, immediately notify the office. It is critical that we know what's going on the streets. When we don't, and we're surprised we can't deal with it, we could have maneuvered then, and we never would have been at this meeting probably. But in terms of a settlement, the truth of the matter is, based on talking with legal and going through various things, it probably makes sense to accept an agreement such as this. I probably would have said a year, just because I would have probably said a year, because I can mark my calendar easier. But 10 months, I would say 10 months, and that means they'll be coming back for most of next season.
I've seen a lot of heads shaking up and down in the yes mode to my right, so. Are there other discussions, questions before we ask for a motion?
Just to be clear, this is a full-sized bike. We're not doing a 6-passenger, no. It's exactly what we saw last time. And I know Mr. Fields has verified this by now, but again, I just want to be crystal on this, because I felt very offended for Mr. Fields in that I felt like there was a misrepresentation, whether it was intentional or not, because I was the one who fostered the deal. I have a great memory. It was very clear as to what we agreed on, what those bikes were going to look like, why we were doing that deal. Mr. Fields was here. He knew what we were agreeing to. Your client was here. So whether it was unintentional or not, I thought it was pretty clear at that meeting what those bikes were going to look like, why we were doing what we were doing, what the whole intent was. So I am very adamant, because I fostered the deal.
Yes.
And I'm a little offended for Mr. Fields, because whether he felt like he was misled, I felt like he was misled.
Okay. Those concerns and sentiments are valid. I can assure you that was not our intention. And as Mr. Fields intimated, there was probably a better way to handle this. When the issues came up, we could have been taken more initiative to present them to Mr. Fields. And I guess they would have come before you again, and you would have given due consideration. That being said, the pedal carriages that we are discussing are the 2 carriages that are currently permitted that have been disclosed to Mr. Fields. Those are the 2.
With no deviation.
There have been no deviations to those vehicles at all. And one of them will be, we will only run one vehicle, because you will be, under our proposal, one of our permits will be suspended for 10 months.
And just one at a time. In other words, they can be
just one at a time. Yes,
yeah.
And we can.
There's nothing wrong with that.
We will interchange them, but we will only run one at a time.
For 10 months.
For 10 months.
And then you'll be putting 2 on the streets.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Do we have a motion?
I'll move to accept. Can I just say move to accept the deal?
Ms. Costanza, could you
I'll restate.
outline the...
Yeah, sure. So the proposal is to suspend one of the 2 permitted vehicles associated with this certificate for a period of 10 months. Did I say that right?
Yes.
That's my motion.
there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, motion passes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Mr. Fields, I think we're now down to, well, the complaint against Sugar Creek by American Melody Carriages has been postponed.
It will be postponed. Yeah, Mr. Blackburn's not available today and asked to be put to the September meeting. Also, the only other thing I would add, the committee which you authorized to develop RFP has been working hard. The committee was then broken into a subcommittee that has worked equally hard. Those documents are we're working with purchasing. We're working with the wide variety of people you ask us to. Very likely it's very possible that we're going to need a special meeting of the commission to consider the RFP in order to stay on schedule. I would anticipate the first or second week, of September for the consideration. And again, we'll need to work out some of the details, but I think you would be very pleased with the progress that's been made.
And did you and Ms. Combs meet with the Metro Police Department today to discuss enforcement of some of these SMUDs?
We did not.
You did not? Okay, so we'll leave that to another day.
We canceled that meeting because of a communication received from MNPD indicating that MNPD was not prepared to have their officers write citations for some D offenses.
So one of the things that we're doing, we're looking for creative ways to move forward on enforcement. I'm very open to suggestions. We've actually got a couple of pretty good ideas. That'll be, some of it will take a law change because we're going to need to be able to do some confiscations and some removals and that sort of thing. So it may take some.
You can already do that.
Well, then I may not have to. We may have a truck out tomorrow.
Yeah,
we are going to be. I'm sorry.
You have heard from Metro Police Department that they are not going to be in position to do any enforcement of the SMUDs.
Not at the present time. We're going to be the good news is we do have authority to issue the citations ourselves. Mm-hmm. We do not have the authority to stop vehicles. I'm not sure I can deputize you, but we do have that authority. So what we're going to be looking at is creative ways to be able to stop people. Again, they're not police officers, which means stopping and detaining is outside our authority. But if a vehicle is stopped and a person is stopped, then we have full authority to write citations.
Can I bring one other thing up for clarification?
Yeah.
August. Sure. The August 7th minutes that were approved at the beginning of the meeting, I did not see August 7 minutes in the packet, and I checked with Ms. Steelman, and she did not know that they were in there either. And so I just wanted to make sure that we were talking about the same.
It's possible that some, and I'm not sure how exactly.
July 25.
Yeah, I want to make sure that you got both sets. If you did not get two sets of minutes, that means that I had an error in the prep, and you did not get them.
All I saw was July 25.
That's all I have. How in the world?
All right. Do we need to?
Maybe just rescind the approval of the August 7 minutes until they can be prepared and presented before you.
Oh, they're prepared. They're sitting on this.
To rescind the previous approval of the August 7th minutes until they are prepared and distributed to all the commissioners.
So moved.
Second?
Aye. Second.
All right. All in favor, say aye, please.
Aye.
All right.
Could I ask a couple of questions?
Yeah.
Did you have a proposed date for the meeting?
I don't have the proposed date because I want to make sure we've got the finished product from procurement. But where we are is your committee has put together, for lack of a better way to put it, the guts of what we think a RFP should look like. What has to happen now is that is then recommended to the procurement office. The procurement office actually writes the RFP based on the document, the information that we put together for them.
Can we see that?
I'm going to defer to legal on how that will happen.
I think yes.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, I'm going to say yes.
Yes, okay. I'd like to see it.
Let me get it finished, and I'm going to get it.
Oh, it's not finished? Oh, I'm sorry. I thought.
Well, the document is not. a significant part of it is finished in terms of what we're doing the wordsmithing on it now. What will happen at that point, they'll take those documents, and I think I can say this without disclosing too much. There are anticipated outcomes and anticipated things that you would expect to be in an RFP related to SUMD. So those are in there. They would then be reduced to question form of posing, how would this happen, how would that happen? Right. So we have to be very cautious in the way that it's released from the standpoint of what's a public document, because we also have procurement rules, and we're certainly not the best to be able to figure that out. But we have two different sets of laws we're dealing with. We're dealing with open records law, then we're doing procurement laws, and is that a good way to put it, would you say? Probably not.
All of those things are certainly in play.
Okay. Well, I would hope we could see it at whatever the first available date is, the first legal date, okay?
Absolutely.
All right, under other business, Commissioner Palmer has a matter she wanted to bring up.
Yeah, I just had a question about my recollection when we were dealing with the amending the emergency regulations. My recollection is that we ran out of time. We had done the dusk to dawn one, and we had done one other one, and then we had run out of time, and we said, well, let's just adopt this whole thing, and then we can come back and change it. I thought we were doing that today. Are we still doing that, or are we just going to let this stand until the RFP goes?
What I'd recommend is, yeah, we can certainly do that. Your rule-making authority is on play. If there are rules that you'd like to have considered and things, we can put that on the agenda for the September meeting, and we just want to make sure we notice it broad enough to deal with, if there's specific areas, but if the other commissioners,
I don't think we have to notice specific areas, but we do need to know, like, which areas the commissioners want to make changes to. I mean, I think if we just notice that you're going to amend those rules, and that it's going to be a public hearing, then anybody who is interested in discussing that topic will be on notice to come and be.
I mean, my concern was we had talked about things like visible, very visible, I think was the word we used, signage and identification markers. And
I mean, that is in the draft, since that was something that Commissioner Carr had previously made a motion about, and I think that the commission adopted.
I did.
In terms of your recommendations to council that were presented at the June meeting, if I'm recalling correctly, I tried to incorporate those issues into that draft of regular. Yeah, I tried to incorporate those in.
I mean, because I don't see some of them. I mean,
I'm sorry, I put it away.
Well, I think the answer, Commissioners, yes, we can do that. And if there are things you want to have amended and considered, then we put it on the agenda. I mean,
are you talking about like a walkthrough of the entire thing?
Well, I mean, I guess I kind of have lost track of where we are on these regulations. And my recollection was we just said, well, let's adopt this whole thing because we ran out of time, and then we could come back and look at specific provisions. A couple of the ones that I was thinking about were the, unique identifier conspicuously displayed, possibly like how the bicycles have the strobe lights on the back or the blinking lights. Those were some thoughts I had about just in terms of making them more visible. So it was those kinds of things. And I didn't know if I had thought today was the day to do that, but clearly not. So. I'm looking at, I guess on page 3C, this is my redlining, conspicuously displayed in a size. It's said of a size and placed in such a way that the SUMD can be easily identified. And I wanted it, talk about more specifics,
Sure.
visible from a distance of, just, so I thought that'd be a discussion we could have.
Yeah, that's totally something that you all could do upon.
I would say
Procedurally wise, I guess, notify Mr. Fields and staff as to the items you'd like to be put on the agenda, and that way the notice could be sent out to everybody, including the commissioners, and then we can have some discussions about them.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah. Sounds good.
And we can be as focused, and we can be as narrow or as wide as you like. If there's like 10 things that you want to talk about, I think we could notice those 10.
Yeah, I would say notice it, just that you're going to amend the regulations and keep it that broad. And then I think that's adequate notice from an open meetings perspective, and then you can make whatever changes you need to.
Okay.
And then we'll talk and figure that out.
Now, would it be helpful, since there's so much here, for me to send the things that I'm thinking of, like conspicuous numbers, et cetera, to you, and you can share with others? Okay.
Yeah, it would be helpful for all of us to know what we're going to be talking about before we come in to do it, so.
Yeah.
All right.
Public record at that point, too, or is it not at that point?
So in general, you can't email each other because electronic deliberation within a public body is against the Open Meetings Act. But you can always communicate with me and with Mr. Fields and with other TLC staff individually. So I'm not sure in terms of Mr. Fields then redistributing something that he received from one commissioner. I do know, and this is interesting, that it becomes a public record, that a regular old-fashioned snail mail letter may actually be sent by one commissioner to another commissioner, because that is a public record, and really an email is public record too, but there's kind of this concern that if you all email with each other, because that's more of an instantaneous form of communication, that's kind of like replicating deliberation, but doing it in a non-public context, whereas sending someone an old-fashioned letter is kind of slow enough that the public has time to catch up at the same time that the commissioners do, I guess, is the theory behind it. So I think that maybe could be done. I know, it's a little convoluted. But
all lawyers are in charge.
Right.
All we're trying to do, though, is communicate.
I don't make the policy, I'm just trying to interpret it.
And whether we want to have a public hearing on it. So
I can just say I want to talk about the lights on the back, the identifier, and you can tell them that. You don't have to send them my.
In a situation like that, if you were to say I want to talk about those, that might even be a broad saying safety issues relative to identification.
Okay.
all right, is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second? Second. All in favor? Aye. Motion carries.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information about this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.